Well, happy Monday afternoon. This is 580 Sports Talk. Brendan Dworzinski back in studio with you, along with Dan Lucero and Spencer Dupuis. Thank you for hanging out with us on this Monday afternoon. And what a crazy busy Monday it is. The draft is done. It is over. The Chiefs have their 7-man class. We will get to that. We will get to the rest of the NFL and what the draft looked like coming up a little bit later on this afternoon as well. Our favorite picks from the Chiefs and elsewhere, the picks that have left us scratching our head a little bit. We will get to all of that coming up today on 580 Sports Talk. It won't just be draft, although I should mention we are also going to hear from Brett Veach in the 4 o'clock hour today. But we've got some Royals to get to. Royals this weekend. Tough one against the Tigers team that I'll admit I was wrong about. They are indeed better than I thought. And
they can really pitch. I don't know if they can hit, but yeah, dude, that's what they look like.
Certified dude, Tarek Skubal. So we'll get to the Royals a little bit later on this hour. Kansas State. Wow, what a weekend!
It's
with
really
the
been a
transfer
week.
portal. Yeah, I mean it's been going back to Friday. I'm sure you guys talked about it on Friday's show. Brendan Housen committing to K-State, the 3-point sharpshooter. KU had a big week last week, specifically Friday as well, with Rylan Griffin committing to the KU program. But this weekend, new big man for K-State basketball, losing a now former freshman who I had really high hopes for. Oh, and by the way, the football team added one of the best running backs who were available in the portal this year in Dylan Edwards. Not really a surprise. I think we all kind of knew when Edwards went in the portal where he was probably going to end up, but it's massive. And now you've got a backfield of Avery Johnson, Dylan Edwards, and DJ Giddens, which is the best rushing threat in the Big 12 and one of the best in the entire country. So we'll get to the portal a little bit, specifically when it comes to K-State in the 4 o'clock hour today. Our monthly semifinals for What Is Wrong With You are coming up. We'll recap what was, at least for me, a very fun weekend in the good, the bad, and the ugly. Hope you all had a great weekend as well. And so much more coming up today on 580 Sports Talk. We want you to be a part of the show. You know how to do it. Either find us on YouTube. 580 Sports Talk on YouTube is the name of our channel. You can also find the video streaming on Facebook, WIBW News, and on Twitter at 580 Sports Talk. And you can jump in to the Top City Metal Supply text line. That number is 785-272-9429. Let us know your thoughts on anything we're talking about today. We want to hear from you about the draft. Your favorite picks for the Chiefs. Overall, what did you think of this Chiefs class? Do you also want to make fun of Bo Nix going to the Denver Broncos? I know that came up on Friday's show right after the first round. I did not get a chance to talk about it. I am going to laugh at the Denver Broncos for taking Bo Nix, and some really dumb stories about Sean Payton that came out today regarding that process. So we'll get to that. We want to hear what you have to say about it on the Top City Metal Supply text line and on YouTube as well. We will get to the local players who got drafted. So those are the KU and K-State guys. We'll get to that tomorrow on the show. Wanted to do it today, but holy cow, there's a lot of stuff we have to get to.
In a short amount of time.
We're done early. I should also mention that. We're out of here at 5:30 today. Royals, Blue Jays coming up from Toronto. I also have to mention this before we start. Up over 500 YouTube subscribers, 505 at the start of the show today. I don't know why y'all don't like me, but that's all right. It's good for business, and that's good for all of us.
We're 506 now.
There we go. Hey, even I brought one in today. How about that? No, but I appreciate you two, obviously leading the the telethon on Friday to bring everyone in, and appreciate you as well for subscribing to us on YouTube. If you haven't yet, go find us on YouTube. 580 Sports Talk's the name of the channel.
The best bit ever.
We did it. I want to make that clear.
No, that's true.
We, not you, Brendan. We.
We, in the year and a half, more than a year and a half now, a year and 3/4 that we've been doing the live stream every day. I mean, we've added upwards of 500 subscribers just since then. I think 400 of them can be attributed to everyone but me. At least, with me just taking a small part in all the others. But we do appreciate you guys, whether it's part of a bit, you just love what we do. We do appreciate you for checking us out online. Lots of video stuff that we have up there. Dan and Spencer did video recaps live on YouTube for both the first-round pick of Xavier Worthy for the Chiefs and Kingsley Suamataia. I believe it's Mattia, not Mattia.
Suamataia.
Matai. Okay, so it's both.
So there's a little bit of when you listen, if you go to the BYU football website, you go to his roster page,
they would know.
You can hear him say it.
I love when colleges do that. That's my favorite part about colleges, when they invest in the ability to do that on their website, because it's so much easier than even trying to pronounce it on a piece of paper. Hearing them do it, hearing the player say it, is the best.
Helps even idiots like me.
Perhaps you've seen some players of Samoan descent have like apostrophes in their last names. It sort of sounds like there is one, even though there is not one in what is gone around as the spelling. But if you listen to him say it, it is Suomataia.
Perfect. And he's a great pick for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yes, he is.
Why don't we go right there? Go watch the videos that Spencer and Dan did recapping the picks from the first 2 days of the draft for the Chiefs. But let's get into the class and some thoughts on what the Chiefs are able to accomplish this weekend. Xavier Worthy goes in the first round. Chiefs traded up 4 spots to get him. I don't hate the move at all. The Chiefs just slid back. Didn't even have to give up an extra pick. I don't know what the hell Buffalo was doing. Second round, Kingsley Suamataia, the offensive tackle from BYU, a guy who I said I would have been comfortable with at pick 32. I would have taken him in the first round. You have to move up 1 spot and, again, just slide back in the 6th to go up 1 and get him.
You do lose your third rounder.
They did lose the third, but they got a fourth.
They
Yeah,
didn't lose it. They
traded back.
Swapped it around and moved it around.
They still made 7 picks. That's the thing, and that's why the Buffalo thing is bizarre. Buffalo needs players. They need talent. They made multiple trades back. They didn't add any picks. They just slid up a little bit. So if you're the Chiefs, thrilled. You move up just a little bit to get Suamataia. You move up just a few spots to get Xavier Worthy. 2 guys more than happy with to get in the first and second round. Awesome. Fourth round, he had 2 picks. Jared Wiley, the tight end from TCU. Then you get Jaden Hicks, the safety from Washington. We're going to get to him specifically here in a moment.
Washington State,
excuse me. Sorry, honey.
It's all right. There were like a billion Washington players who got drafted.
So many. Hunter Norzad, the offensive lineman from Penn State, officially a center, but he played 4 different spots in college. Kamal Haddon, cornerback, Tennessee. And then the final pick was C.J. Hansen, interior lineman from Holy Cross. First Holy Cross Crusader to be drafted since 1989. And C.J. Hansen's a Kansas City Chief. So overall, just generally speaking, I like this class. There are some guys that I don't necessarily love. Like, there's good and bad that comes with Jared Wiley. I don't necessarily know that I love the player. I don't think he's a bad player. I mean, he's an all Big 12 pick this past year. He's not a bad player. Not my favorite tight end in the class. Xavier Worthy, I would have preferred the other Texas wide receiver, but I don't dislike Xavier Worthy by any means. I think it's fine. It's speed. That's what the Chiefs want. Suamataia, love it. Absolutely love it. I would have taken him number 32. I'm thrilled to get him at 63. I like Jaden Hicks a lot. Offensive line depth you needed. Day 3, cornerback. Haddon is going to be an all-pro in 3 years. Like that's just what Brett Veach does. So I don't know about you guys. I'm more than content with this class. I don't think it is on paper, and we won't know for 2 or 3 years for certain how these guys will play out. But on paper, maybe not the flashiest draft Brett Veach has ever had, but you addressed what you needed. You got some good talent. You got some good value at the top. I'm very content with this.
So what I said on the instant reaction video Spencer and I did on Friday night after they took Suamataia with the 63rd overall pick, these are big swings for the Chiefs. These are high ceiling picks for the Chiefs. These are guys that you take with your first 2 selections, Worthy and Suamataia, who may not be polished, finished projects yet, but have elite blue chip skill. For Worthy, it's the speed, right? Nobody's ever been faster at the NFL scouting combine than Xavier Worthy. That is an elite trait. That is a top of the scale trait that if you can coalesce a skill set around it, he could be one of the best receivers in the NFL. Suamataia has elite measurables. Like the physical traits are all there. He's not a finished project yet, but the physical traits are there. And if you trust the coaching staff to get him to his potential, you've got a long-term starting left tackle to protect Patrick Mahomes' blind side. You know what else I really like about those first 2 picks? They're both 21. This is a draft where there were a lot of old guys, most notably the 5th and 6th quarterbacks or the 4th and 6th quarterbacks taken in the first round. Penix and Bo Nix are going to be 24 before the start of the new NFL season. There are a lot of 23, 24-year-olds out there who went in the draft. Chiefs took young, toolsy guys and faith in their system, faith in their coaching staff to get them to reach their potential. To me, that's how you should draft. If you're drafting low in the draft order because you're a Super Bowl champion, you're not going to have access to the blue chip polished talent at the top of the draft. Like, you're not going to get a Rome Odunze at wide receiver. You're not going to get a Joe Alt at offensive tackle. What you have to do is take the guys who could be that with coaching and with time, and then you coach them up. And if it all hits, these are two long-term pieces of the Chiefs offense as Mahomes enters his prime.
And I like, too, that they're building depth on the offensive line specifically. I mean, you're drafting what? Is that 3 guys they drafted?
Yes. Tackle and 2 interior guys.
Yeah, and that interior, one of the interior guys, Norzad has started a college game, I think, at every tackle, guard, and center position in college. And I think that's a huge asset because you want a guy who's versatile. If something happens in a game where you've got a guy injured already and then another guy goes out, you can throw him out to tackle if you have to in a game, and he knows how to play the position. Whether he's, he wasn't projected to be a top talent, he switched positions, but you always like versatile guys, especially guys that I think he was listed as a guard on most things. You're drafting him as a center, according to, I think, what they put in, if I'm correct.
And center was one of the positions he played the least in terms of number of starts during his career at Penn State. I don't know what you exactly call this. I guess you're just your utility lineman.
Yeah.
They needed to find a guy to replace Nick Allegretti, a guy who can play. You're probably not playing Norzad at tackle. You're right. In a pinch, you could if needs be.
Yeah, in a pinch in a game.
But if Trey Smith gets banged up, you got to play a second half of the backup. Norzad goes there. Creed Humphrey, same thing, gets banged up, misses a half of a game. Boom, you put him at center. You're going to feel comfortable with that. That was a clear need this team has. You go out and address it.
And every report I've read about Norzad, like, I'm not going to sit here and lie and say I've eaten all the Hunter Norzad tape, but everything I've read suggests this is one of the smartest offensive linemen.
Yes.
Who was taken in this draft.
I was listening to the presser. I can't remember if it was I think it was either the assistant GM or the area scout. I can't remember. I was listening to a bunch of the press conferences the Chiefs put out, and they were talking about how the guy had never seen a guy that smart, to where when he went to Penn State, not only was he being recruited for football, as a grad student, he was being recruited to the engineering program.
Yeah, smart kid. I know. I was listening earlier today, and because I wanted to use this to transition into just favorite individual picks here. I was listening to the Athletic Football Show, and Dane Brugler, who we've had on the program before, he's the draft guru at the Athletic. They were talking about the Chiefs draft, and he said one of his favorite interviews he did with a player all year was Hunter Norzad. When he talked to him at the Combine, said it was one of his favorite conversations about football, about other things. Just really enjoyed talking to him and getting to know him, and likes the person as well as the player. He also said this, and this, Sua Mataia is my number one here. I love that pick. I'm thrilled with it. I don't know that he has a crazy high ceiling. Like, I think, like Tyler Guyton from Oklahoma, I think he has as high of a ceiling as anyone not named Joe Alt. I also think he's got a lower floor. I think Sua Mataia, he may never be an all-pro at left tackle, but I think by next year he is going to be your starting left tackle. I really like the potential for him as just a steady anchor of that line. So he's my number one favorite. But Dane Brugler said Jaden Hicks, he described it as, quote, criminal. He ended up in the 4th round. And this wasn't even the first pick of the 4th round, right? I mean, this was well toward the very end of the 4th round when he ended up going, the safety from Washington State. Said it was criminal that he went that far. He was a top 50 player on Dane Brugler's big board before the draft. A top 50 player in the whole class. You got him at number 133 overall. So I love to hear that. And how Chiefs is that? To take a guy who, for one reason or another, not necessarily anything character-wise or injury-wise or anything like that, just for whatever reason slipped. We're going to take that guy. We're going to get him for great value, and he's probably going to play a huge role. Because what team plays 3 safeties more than anyone else in the NFL?
The Chiefs.
Steve Spagnuolo and the Kansas City Chiefs. He's immediately safety 3, is he not? You've got Justin Reed, you've got Brian Cook, and then in a slightly more limited role where you can bring him along a little bit more, you put in Jaden Hicks.
I think that's correct. I think that is his role. And I think that was the one pick that jumps out as the Chiefs seeing a best player available regardless of need, and they took him. And you have the flexibility to do that with 2 4th-round picks is say, hey, whoever's fallen on our draft board, regardless of position, regardless of what we need here, this is a guy we really like. He's high on our board, and we're going to take him and prioritize player more than need necessarily at that option, at that pick. So I did, and we're not alone here. There are a lot of people who really like the selection of Jaden Hicks. I loved the Suamataia pick. I think he could be starting by the middle of this next season. I think the potential is there. Get him in the room with Andy Heck and let him figure it out, because the raw tools are potentially really special. Aaron Roderick is the offensive coordinator at BYU, and he told Bruce Feldman, when Bruce Feldman was putting together his freaks list before this past college football season, for the record, Nicholas Harbor, who was a 5-star recruit and a track superstar and defensive end at South Carolina, he was number 1 on the list. Marvin Harrison Jr. was 2nd. Kingsley Suamataia was 3rd on the list, 3rd on the freaks list. And this is what Aaron Roderick, his offensive coordinator, said about him. Kingsley Suamataia is the most athletic and violent offensive lineman I've ever coached. More athletic than Garrett Bowles when I was at Utah. More athletic than Blake Freeland. Blake Freeland was BYU's left tackle the year before and got drafted. Garrett Bowles has started 82 out of 82 games in his NFL career. Like, we can make fun of him a little bit because he got called for holding a lot early in his career, but he was a second contract guy. He's a stalwart left tackle in the league.
And shoot, you know what the biggest asset for Bowles was when he was drafted was that he played mean. That was the whole thing. Is like, he's nasty, he's physical, he's mean, he's got technique problems, and he's like 26 years old, but he's physical, he's tough, he's mean. If you're better in that regard than that guy, well, what does that say about you, right?
Yeah.
So that I love that. Also, I assume you guys saw the video of Andy Reid talking on the phone to Kingsley Suamataia. The fact that he got to draft an offensive lineman from BYU, that must have been his favorite pick ever. Right there at the very top. Yeah. Anyone else who's a favorite of this class to you guys?
Well, I was in on Jared Wiley until I saw he's going to wear the number 12, and that is an absolutely cursed number for an tight end to wear.
Yuck.
That's gross, man. I might be out on Wiley. That, in all seriousness, I think you watch some of Wiley's highlights, and it's hard not to see Travis Kelce with his ability to manipulate open space, find seams, and make plays after the catch without it looking like he's running particularly fast. There were a couple of highlight reels that were out there and plays where it was like watching a Travis Kelce run after the catch with Jared Wiley. I think that's a really natural fit in the Chiefs scheme, and having another tight end who's a pass catching threat to go with Noah Gray is going to help take some of the pressure and some of the snap load off of Travis Kelce, which I think will be valuable and help him save his legs for the big games and the big occasions as he advances in his career. A career that, it should be noted, looks like it will extend 2 years past the current contract he was on, as he and the Chiefs agreed to a 2-year extension earlier this afternoon.
Which I think goes to show, too, you draft a guy in, what was it, the 4th round?
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that it's over for him after his contract.
Yeah.
Like, some people on Twitter were pointing to the fact is you got a guy that could replace Travis Kelce in 2 years if he plays behind him. No, he's still going to play as long as he wants to play.
How many defenses are built to handle 2 receiving threats at tight end?
Not many.
There aren't many, which this is a side note. We might get to this coming up in the 3 o'clock hour today. That's why I actually really liked that the Raiders took Brock Bowers. Like, they took Michael Mayer a year ago, who I think is a good prospect. How many teams have the right defensive players to slow down both of those dudes at tight end? I think it's the same kind of thing here. This also, to me, clearly says Noah Gray is only going to play 1 more year in Kansas City. That's fine. It happens. Whatever. I like the idea of Wiley, and I don't mean to rip on the guy. He was not my favorite tight end in the class, but you get him. I understand why you take him there. 4th round, that's a good spot, etc. Were there any for either of you guys that felt like or confused you at all? Again, I like the class overall. I think it's steady. I think you addressed all your needs. Any of the picks kind of leave you a little confused?
I guess I'm a little disappointed, surprised that they didn't end up drafting a running back. And I think that's just a function of how the board fell, where there were a lot of guys I felt like were fits at running back for the Chiefs that were getting plucked off the board just picks before the Chiefs were expected to
Yeah.
go. I thought they'd go in that direction, and I thought they'd take an interior defensive lineman. They didn't take either of those positions, but I don't think that's a failure necessarily. It just surprised me a little bit. As a 7-player class, I think this is a really good class.
I agree with him. That was going to be my take, is not drafting an interior defensive lineman. I guess that means you're just going to continue to kick the can down the road with those 1-year guys that you brought back, and hopefully you can find a guy next year earlier in the draft.
I'm with you. Running back, I get it does sort of follow the trend the Chiefs have used the last couple of years. 7th round on Isaiah Pacheco. Deneric Prince was a UDFA. You go UDFA again this year to add to your running back depth. And I don't know that I love that approach, but I get it. That's what the Chiefs do. That's what they want to do. I understand that. I do think a talented or at least projectable defensive tackle was important in this class. So that's the one thing. And I get, for example, and I don't remember exactly what the board looked like. I get why the Chiefs went with CJ Hansen. And when you're picking the 248th pick, you're essentially just beating a team out for a UDFA anyway. That's why a lot of websites, they'll grade guys, round 1, round 2, etc. But then round 7 is 7/UDFA. I get it. I'm not going to complain about that pick. It's nothing against CJ Hansen. I just feel like you should have taken a flyer on an interior guy and been able to lock them up longer term. Be able to know we've got this option there for 4 years, and a super cheap 4 years at that. Because right now you have no future other than Chris Jones on the interior. Maybe they like a guy next year. Maybe they've looked ahead to the free agent class. They think they'll find someone. I don't know. I haven't asked Brett Veach about that. Hopefully someone asks him that during his press conference, which is about to start here in less than 20 minutes, and we'll get to hear about that a little bit in the 4 o'clock hour. We've got a lot of draft to get to today. We'll talk some more Chiefs on the other side of our first commercial break, including the fact that I think teams and scouts and mock drafters, including us, have gotten better at knowing what exactly the Chiefs want, or they were just that obvious about what they wanted this year. We'll also talk some Royals baseball later on this hour. Difficult series this weekend against the Tigers. They'll try to bounce back tonight against the Toronto Blue Jays. All that and much more coming up on this Monday edition of 580 Sports Talk. Our guy Lenny Dawson on YouTube says that he likes going with Jared Wiley in the 4th round and is happy going tight end over running back in this year's class. I think you could argue making room for both, but again, just in terms of the positions that you needed, if you're the Chiefs, I get why they went the way they went. I do. I would have liked a defensive tackle, but it's hard to get too upset about anything in particular. Neilio on YouTube says, let's hope the newest BYU tackle drafted by the Chiefs doesn't have the same messy contract issues that former BYU Cougar John Tate had 20 years ago. That one got messy. John Tate was a good player.
He was a very good player.
Was a Chicago Bear after he left the Chiefs, if I remember correctly. I did want to ask this, too, just looking at the full class for the Chiefs. Brendan, Dan, and Spencer here, by the way. This is 580 Sports Talk on a Monday afternoon. When you look at these 7, in terms of the 2024 Chiefs, how many of these guys do you think are instant contributors? Guys who, even if it is a fairly minor role, guys who you think will make a positive impact on the team year one?
I think the top 5 guys are probably on your 2 deep. At the very least. I think Worthy is probably wide receiver 3, maybe wide receiver 4, maybe wide receiver 2 if when Rashee Rice is suspended. Yeah. I think Suamataia has a chance to win the left tackle job. Just the traits are there, and the Chiefs may just decide, hey, let's let him learn on the job. Wiley's probably tight end 3. Those guys get snaps. You know, the Chiefs like to do some 2 and 3 tight end personnel. Jaden Hicks looks like safety 3.
Yep.
And Hunter Norzad might be the first interior lineman off the bench this coming season for the Chiefs. So I guess it depends on what you mean by contributor. Like, I think all those guys are going to be on the 2 deep. Hatton might even be a guy who cracks the 53 because he was outstanding in the SEC last year.
And until he got hurt. Before he got hurt, he had 8 pass breakups, 3 picks, and a touchdown in 7 games before he ended up hurting his shoulder, and that finished off his year. So yeah, I think you can make an argument for most of these guys. I think the ones I would say for sure, because ideally you don't get to your backup. So if you're talking about guys who are going to be in your regular rotation, backups on the offensive line, I think the top 4 for sure, because Worthy's going to play a bunch. I think Suamataia has a chance to be your starting left tackle this year, or at the very least, he is going to be in competition for it. I think Jared Wiley will play. Sometimes he'll be tight end too. I think most of the time when you see a 3 tight end package, which the Chiefs would love to do more of, you will get to see more of him. And I'm with you. I think Jaden Hicks is safety 3 for this team, and he's going to play a bunch if that is indeed the case. So I'm pretty happy with that group, and I do think these are a lot of guys who should be able to help you out right away. Guys who've played a lot of football, team captains. I know CJ Hansen, among others, he was a team captain. That's something that some teams put a lot of value on, especially in late picks. I like this class. I do think you're going to get some immediate returns. I also feel like this year was one of the most accurate mock drafting years for the Chiefs that I can remember, because there's always a few players that you throw in here or there. You know, Felix and DK Uzama last year, we had thought that maybe he is in that range. That wasn't a super common mock draft pick. All 3 of the Chiefs' first 3 picks, guys we saw in mock drafts for them for weeks. Xavier Worthy, constantly an option in the first round for the Chiefs. Kingsley Suamataia, mostly in the first round, but we saw him as a frequent option for the Chiefs in various mock drafts. Jared Wiley, we only did 1 round as a group, but Wiley was one that came up a bunch. I think Jesse Newell or Blair Kirkhoff, one of the guys from the Star, they had him as an option on 1, if not 2, of their mock drafts that they did.
Might have been some of the KCSN guys, too. I think Jordan Foote.
That might have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right about that.
Jordan.
So those are all guys who we saw tied to the Chiefs pretty early on. We knew they were going to take some offensive line help. We knew they were going to take a cornerback at some point. So I don't know if this is mostly just the Chiefs were being that obvious about the traits they wanted, the skills and positions they wanted, and you just do process of elimination. Or maybe we're just getting better at figuring out what fits the Chiefs.
Yeah, I think there were really obvious boxes to check for the Chiefs this year. That's part of it. I mean, sometimes you go into a draft and, boy, you don't have the most obvious of holes. Like most teams have at least one real high priority that you go into the draft knowing that, hey, we got to fill this void one way or another. We got to go get a guy at this position who's going to help us right away. And the higher up you draft, the more often you have many of those weaknesses or holes on your 53-man roster. For the Chiefs, they need wide receiver depth, and they're still looking for a left tackle. So it was pretty obvious that those were going to be points of interest and targets for the Chiefs with their first 2 picks. And that's exactly the order they went with them. Went with wide receiver round 1, went with left tackle round 2. And again, when you look at the traits that these guys do have, they're kind of in line with players we've seen the Chiefs target or develop in recent years. With Worthy, it's that top end speed. It's that ability to stretch the defense. The Chiefs have obviously prioritized that this offseason with the addition of Hollywood Brown and free agency. They need to be able to bring the deep ball back as a legitimate threat. And in that way, Worthy makes a lot of sense because he's the fastest guy in the history of the scouting combine.
Yeah, I'll take my flowers on this one.
Yeah.
I did pick him.
We gave him your flowers on Friday, Spencer. You don't get them again on the Monday. Settle down.
Just because I didn't hear it doesn't mean no. But on a serious note, the other thing about this draft too, because I really do believe that the Chiefs didn't need to be a Super Bowl contender. The Chiefs didn't have to add like a true superstar in this draft. It's not like, well, shoot, if they don't add one of the top 3 receivers, a Neighbors and a Dunze, a Harrison, then this team is not going to be good enough. They weren't in a position like that. So you could afford to take some swings here. I think Xavier Worthy is a swing. I think that is swinging for the fences because you're right. The number 1 star trait is there, but you've got to be able to unlock the other parts of the player to make the most use of it. I think Suamataia, as much as I like him, there is development that you have to have there, but you're going to have him in a competition right away. He might not win the job. Maybe you think, hey, based on what we've seen, he's a year away, and we'll have another competition between Wanye Morris, maybe a veteran, and Suamataia coming up next year. You are in a position where you can afford to take swings like that, where if it works and it hits and come week 10, Xavier Worthy is undoubtedly wide receiver 3, and you're running all sorts of crazy stuff with these deep over and deep post concepts with Marquise Brown and with Xavier Worthy. Okay, well, you're feeling great. If he doesn't quite hit in that regard, you know what you do? Okay, you're going to play Justin Watson some more snaps. You're going to run your 2 and 3 tight end stuff more often. You're going to run 2 running back stuff more often. You can figure out a way to make that work so you can find a way to support yourself and stay afloat, even if these guys don't develop right away. Whereas if they do, you're in an even better spot. It's essentially win-win.
Blue chip players, blue chip talents win games, and you can develop players with a blue chip skill, with a top of the scale skill or measurable, whatever it is. That's what you have to do when you're picking late in the draft. Because like I said earlier, you don't have the access to go and get a Rome Odunze at wide receiver. You don't get the finished projects, the guys who are going to come in and be, potentially 70, 80 catch guys as a rookie. Like you're probably not getting that player. So you have to develop that player. You have to identify the players who could be that with time, with coaching in your system, with patience, and then bring them along. And when they do hit, it's like you had the access to that top 10 pick. And that's how you sustain this level of competitiveness, this level of championship level play.
I think too, I like where they went. Like as much as we were talking about them needing defensive line, the more I look at, a potential depth chart and the roster just at the defensive line position for this year.
Yeah.
I think if you drafted somebody, I don't necessarily know how he would fit in on your roster construction because obviously Charles Omenihu is going to be on the IR, if not half the year, the whole year recovering from his injury. You still have your top, 8 guys really on the defensive line with you, to put in Felix in there. I think maybe a 7th round flyer, that's where you would have gone interior or exterior defensive line, but they got 2 guys in undrafted free agency. I just don't think if you're the Chiefs, unless it was a 7th round, you could draft the guy that you're probably going to put on your practice squad. The more that I think about it, I was wanting them to get an interior defensive lineman for most of the draft.
See, I see where you're coming from, but on the other hand, like Johnny Newton right now without a single snap of NFL football is better than Turk Wharton. Like I honest to God believe that. Like I am a believer, especially if you are the Chiefs and you don't have these dire needs. you take the best talent. You take the best guy available. And again, I'm not saying that as a complaint. I know I used Johnny Newton there. I'm not saying I'm complaining about Xavier Worthy in the first round. I'm fine with that pick. I'm happy with it. You needed a wide receiver. You added speed. All good. I do think you could have added to defensive line and added more top-end talent there. I would have double-dipped at wide receiver. I know I said that before the draft. I would have thought about adding another receiver at some point. Then again, the receiver market in the draft was insane because Luke McCaffrey, who I said was a 6th or 7th rounder, went in the 3rd. It was all Troy Franklin went in the 4th. We'll get to the Broncos. Don't worry about that. But it was kind of a weird way the draft unfolded. Everything was normal for about 7 picks. Then Michael Penix went, and it all just fell apart.
Screwed up everyone's board.
Every single person and their mock draft with that pick of Michael Penix at number 8. We'll take a break from the draft. When we come back, we'll talk a little Royals baseball from the weekend. We'll get to some other general NFL stuff in the 3 o'clock hour, including that Verderame to join us to break down the NFL draft. We got a whole lot more coming up on this Monday edition of 580 Sports Talk. Brendan, Dan, and Spencer here with you on 580 Sports Talk. Let us know your thoughts on the draft, the Royals, anything else on the Top City Metal Supply text line, 785-272-9429, or in the 580 Sports Talk YouTube comment. Show is streaming live on YouTube today. Royals took on the Tigers over the weekend, a Tigers team that I admit is better than I thought they would be this year. The Royals won the opener 8-0. Then fell by 1 run on Saturday and lost 4-1 yesterday. Tark Skubel's good, man. He is a star.
Yeah, bona fide ace.
Yeah.
Bona fide top of the rotation guy, and sometimes you just get got by an ace, and that's what happened Sunday. He was really, really sharp. Royals got to him early, but didn't capitalize on a chance to make that a bigger number. I mean, 2 batters in, it's 1-0 Royals, but didn't capitalize on the early chance, and you let a guy like that settle in, you're in for a long day. So give Skubel the credit. I'm starting to sound like a broken record with some of these 3-game series that the Royals play, where that swing game in the series is not a game the Royals are getting. And the swing game in this series happened to be Saturday, and they had a 3-0 lead, and then it was a 3-1 lead, and then Chris Stratton happened, which is, I mean, Stratton kind of feels like that guy in the bullpen this year where when it's good, it's really good. And when it's bad, the Royals probably aren't winning the baseball game. Not making a lot of guys swing and miss. The command hasn't been great. That was the first home run allowed this year by Stratton. The Royals as a whole continue to do, this weekend notwithstanding, because Waka gave up 2 dingers yesterday. The Royals continue to do a really good job limiting the long ball. They're still the best staff in the American League when it comes to home runs allowed. They've only surrendered 19 home runs in 29 games while hitting 29 of their own, which is only good for 9th in the American League. But still, you out-homer your opponents over the long haul, and you strike out less than they do, and you walk more than they do. And the Royals are striking out less than their opponents, and the walks are pretty even. 86 walks drawn by the Royals, 90 walks issued by Royals pitchers. That's a pretty good recipe for success long-term. That being said, Stratton gave up the home run to Veerling that broke that game open and allowed the Tigers to win the swing game. And that's a thing that keeps happening to these Royals, and they have to find a way to get those 1-2 3-game sets to be 2-1 3-game sets, especially on the road against divisional competition.
I think this is, Tigers are better. Tigers can pitch well. They've got a superstar pitcher, in fact, who went yesterday. I mean, I'm not super plussed about it one way or the other. I was happy to see some guys get off the schneid a little bit. Yeah. I think Bobby Witt had a good series. Not that he was struggling that much. Pitching-wise, Lugo was incredible on Friday. Saturday's game, I don't think Singer was bad. I mean, 1 run, only 4 hits in 1 inning.
We're at the point.
You need a little more out of him, though, in terms of length.
I think we're at the point Singer kind of is who he is.
Yeah.
And like the ERA looks good. It's not backed up by the peripherals. The ERA looks shinier than the peripherals would suggest at 2.62. But yeah, if you're expecting he's going to be a guy that's going to give your bullpen a day off, I don't think that's who he is. I think he's going to be a guy whose command comes and goes. He's going to be a guy sometimes within the same inning, sometimes within the same start. There are going to be times the strikeouts come and go. There are going to be times that the long ball bites him, and then there are going to be games where he just cruises through a lineup. I think that I'm ready to file Brady Singer as consistently inconsistent. And look, the upside of that is still what it is, and the downside of that is also what it is. But if that's your number 3 or number 4 starter, that's probably fine. Like if the Royals were still leaning on Brady Singer to be fronting their rotation pitching like he does, I don't know how much they could really count on that.
That is the thing for me with Singer, is that if you have the good is really good, but you don't get enough of the good, both in terms of there's too much inconsistency, and also he's only going to give you 5 innings. I mean, that's a 4th or a 5th starter, which is fine. That's a pretty good 4th or 5th starter. But you wanted more out of him.
I would even make that kind of comparison to Michael Wacha.
Yeah, he's that guy too. Like that's why he's the number 4 starter. And again, he's a guy, he's not going to give you a lot of free bases. Interestingly, he and Brady Singer, although they have very different earned run averages, Singer at 262, Michael Wacha at 424, their fielding independent number exactly the same, 4.03.
Yeah.
So they've been exactly the same pitcher in a sense through their first 6 starts. And there's nothing wrong with having those guys at the middle to back of their rotation. That raises your floor as a team. It makes you competitive when you have guys like that. But there are going to be games where Walker gives up a couple of home runs. It's like there are going to be games where Singer, walks some guys and he's out of the game in the 5th inning or after 5 innings.
And a major reason for this so far this year is Waka is walking 1 full batter less than Brady Singer is per 9.
He's a command guy for sure, but he doesn't overpower you with stuff, and he hangs a changeup like he did to Wensil Perez in the first inning yesterday. That ball will have an in-flight movie on it.
And you're totally right that it's fine to have those guys. It is absolutely fine to have those guys. They are floor-raising players for your team. But that makes it even more important that Cole Reagans is really good. It makes it even more important that Seth Lugo is pitching like a 2 or a 3 instead of a 3 or a 4, right? Because you still want to balance out the okay, sometimes pretty good guys with these guys are really dang good. Because you need to have you need to have a couple of front end guys. You can't make a whole rotation out of 3s and 4s. That is, and really 4s and 5s.
Mhm.
That's where you run into some.
But you need a stopper. You need a guy who's going to win you the rubber game.
Mhm.
You need your Tarek Skubal. I still think Cole Reagans is that.
I do
Again,
too.
Don't let the 3.9 ERA fool you. He's been very hit unlucky to start the year. He's keeping the ball in the ballpark. He's striking out 11 batters per 9 innings. He's been elite striking guys out. I still think Reagans is that guy. He's only 26. He's learning to be that guy in much the same way that Tarek Skubal is learning to be that guy for Detroit. So I think they have that guy.
And he's going to make another 26 starts, by the way.
Yes.
Too early to make a judgment.
Right. They didn't get to him this weekend, and Detroit got to theirs. And sometimes that's the way the cookie crumbles, is the pitching matchup favors one team, and it goes the way the pitching matchup suggests. Skubal versus Walkup looked to go Detroit's way, and it did go Detroit's way yesterday.
On tonight's game, 6:07 start time in Toronto. It'll be Royals, Blue Jays, game 1 of the series. Royals are 17-12, Blue Jays 14-15. Yariel Rodriguez goes for the Blue Jays. Jonathan Bolin gets the call for the Royals, not Daniel Lynch.
Yeah, because Lynch hasn't pitched well in Omaha, and Bolin has. It really comes down to that. It's pretty damning for Daniel Lynch, who went into spring as the number 5 starter, or as at least having as good a chance to be the number 5 starter as anybody else who came into camp, not only losing out to both Jordan Lyles and Alec Marsh, but now losing out on that first call-up with Marsh going on the injured list for Jonathan Bolin. And Bolin has been better. In 4 starts in Omaha, he's got a 2.57 earned run average, a 21-5 strikeout to walk ratio in 21 innings, so he's striking out a batter per inning, and only 2 home runs allowed in those 21 frames. So in a tough hitting environment, he has had 4 very good starts, and he has been the pitcher on the 40-man roster who has earned this opportunity. I'm intrigued to see how he does with it.
I hope he pitches well. He was a highly thought of guy several years ago.
He was a 2nd-round pick out of Memphis. He had some arm trouble. Last year made his big league debut. If you remember or watched Jonathan Bolin pitch for the Royals, you're a real Royals sicko, and I applaud you. He made 2 appearances, 1 start, and 1 game finished, and pitched 3 innings last year towards the end of the season.
So he opened that game, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. Allowed a run on 5 hits, didn't walk anybody, struck out 3. So this is the first real start of Jonathan Bolin's career. He'll probably get at least 1 more after this. I'm intrigued to see how it looks.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I want it to work out well, but I am definitely bummed about Daniel Lynch, because I wanted him to get the job, the 5th starter job, coming out of spring training, and he's not even close to it, which is upsetting. Not that I'm mad or anything. It's just I wished it was working out better.
The flip side of that, though, is, hey, if somebody's out pitching him and you don't have to go to him because, well, he's the next guy,
right?
Like this is our best option, and this is a guy that we promised or whatever. No, you give everybody 4 or 5 starts at AAA. Somebody earned that on merit.
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan Bolin earned the call up on merit. That's a positive.
I do like having Lynch and Bolin and Marsh and Chris Bubich as pitching depth. I mean, Bubich is not going to pitch for quite a while because of the Tommy John surgery, but it actually feels like the Royals have pitching depth. I'm not, and Lyles too. I'm not saying it's necessarily all good depth, but it's better than in the last couple of years when, oh no, someone's hurt, they have to get scratched. We might have to use 9 pitchers in 9 innings to just get through the game. It is nice to at least know you've got a couple of guys who can help out. We'll get to some more NFL draft talk to lead off the 3 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk. Hey now, 3 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk coming your way. Brendan Dworzinski, Dan Lucero, and Spencer Dupuis here with you on the program. You're welcome to be a part of it as well, either on the Top City Metal Supply text line, 785-272-9429, or in the comments section on the 580 Sports Talk YouTube channel. No more wasted metal and no more wasted money for you, because with Top City Metal Supply, they will cut the exact lengths of steel, stainless steel, or aluminum that you need to fit your project's specifications. Hit them up right now. That's Top City Metal Supply on South Topeka Boulevard, just north of Forbes Field here in the capital city. Plenty of NFL draft to get to this hour. We'll get to some general draft takeaways. We've hit on the Chiefs a bunch. We will get to the rest of the league coming up here in just a few moments. We'll also recap the weekend with the good, the bad, and the ugly this hour. And Matt Verderame is going to end up joining us as well to recap draft weekend. How loud and with his chest do you think the sigh was from Matt when Mr. Irrelevant was picked this year? We probably could have heard that almost in our coverage area. What did he say last week? He was going to drink the ocean when it was over. Yeah,
that is what he said.
I'm sure he enjoyed a beverage or two on day 3 of the draft. So we'll get to Matt coming up later on in the show today. Later on today, we've got our monthly semifinals for What Is Wrong With You. We'll talk about the big weekend in the portal for K-State. We're out of here at 5:30 today. We've got Royals baseball coming up tonight. 6:07 first pitch, 5:30 pregame from Rogers Center in Toronto against the Blue Jays. You'll hear the pre, the post, and the game itself right here on 580 WIBW. No show for us on Wednesday this week, because we'll have Royals baseball during the day, going right into some K-State baseball. K-State trying to help out itself in its quest to return to the NCAA tournament and maybe the College World Series. So that'll come up Wednesday on the Sports Voice of Kansas, 580 WIBW. I did want to hit on some of the other highlights from the rest of the draft weekend. I know you guys got to plenty of Michael Penix and Bo Nix on Friday's show after they were taken in the first round of the draft on Thursday night. There are some people out there who are trying to defend the Michael Penix pick. I like Michael Penix more than I like Bo Nix. I also would have drafted him before I took Bo Nix. I would not have taken him top 10. I certainly would not have taken him if I was a team that just gave $100 million guaranteed to a quarterback who is guaranteed to be your starter. I wouldn't have done that.
That's the problem, right? That's the issue, is you invest that strongly in a veteran quarterback. Wouldn't you want to use that 8th pick to help grow a team that you clearly think has the juice to win? Because if you don't think you're good enough to win, you don't go pay a quarterback $100 million, right?
Yeah, no, I agree with you in full. I thought it was interesting. Peter Schrager from NFL Network and Fox Sports, he was on the Pardon My Take podcast today, and he was sharing a story about, the famous story of Sean Payton really wanted Patrick Mahomes and had to have him, and they were so mad that the Chiefs leapt up and got him at 10, and Sean Payton vowed he would never do it again.
I don't believe that story for a second, by the way. I think that's hindsight from Sean Payton. I don't think there's anything about Patrick Mahomes' tape that suggests he's the kind of quarterback that Sean Payton would have fallen in love with for his offense.
I believe the part that Sean Payton liked him. I don't believe that they would have done anything to get him. You know why? They didn't make the move.
Yeah.
Someone else did. If you want the guy, you make the bold. That is the one thing I will defend about Atlanta. The one thing. I think it was the wrong pick. I don't think it was a very good process. But I've told you for years, if you have a guy you want, go get them. Make a trade, stand pat instead of trading back, whatever. Mm-hmm. If Atlanta really wanted Penix, they probably could have traded back like 15 spots or whatever and gotten him.
See, I don't think so. I think the Raiders would have taken him at 13.
Well, maybe the Raiders. Fine. So be it. So that, I think that it almost strengthens my point. Like, they had a guy, they wanted him, they felt like they had to have him. You go get him. I appreciate that. The rest of it, not so good. That part, at least, I can understand. That being said, I think you can make a very strong argument that the worst draft of anyone belonged to the Atlanta Falcons this year, because they took a quarterback that they really didn't need, who's going to be 28 by the time he's a full-time starter.
I just keep going back to that quote from Terry Fontenot. If we don't play him for 4 years, that's a good problem. Why would you give yourself a problem?
Yeah,
why would you draft yourself a problem?
I agree. And then their second-round pick, Rook Ohorohoro, who...
Roro.
Yeah, Roro. Like, You could have got
that was Andre Rison's interior monologue.
Yeah.
Trying to read that pick.
You could have taken him at 4 PM on Saturday. He was not a top 40 player in this draft. And I hope he has a great career and proves all the haters wrong like me. You could have taken him at any other point. They moved up to get him.
Yeah, they did.
That to me is the worst draft because they had great opportunities to get right now nailed on, no doubt starters. They took a quarterback they don't need, and they took a project defensive tackle. And of course, and this infuriates me because of course it does, they also said during their post first round press conference, well, look at what's worked for the Packers. Do you did you do any research into this? Jordan Love was barely 21 when he was drafted. Aaron Rodgers could have any given day said, you know what? I'm actually going to go smoke something you've never heard of in the jungles of South America right now when I'm retiring. And no one would have been surprised. Kirk Cousins just got $100 million guaranteed.
Yeah.
Locked in, no doubt, going to start for 2 years.
And you had defined weaknesses that you had the number 8 overall pick to address. All of them on defense, by the way, in a draft where literally every defensive player on the board was available to you at number 8.
It's outrageous.
And that was the decision they made. No, it's indefensible. I said on Friday, I would have fired Terry Fontenot on the spot if I'd been Arthur Blank.
Yeah,
I would have fired him on the spot.
The other thing was, too, I saw, who said it? Was it Schefter, maybe? Said that Raheem Morris, was in the interview with Michael Penix pre-draft and just loved him. And he was one of the guys banging the table that said, I want that guy. And if that's the case, that's fine. Atlanta, you probably picked the wrong guy.
I think I heard their phone call with him that they went out there for like a private workout or something.
I don't doubt that the Falcons would have had interest in him. I just think it is so, and I'm not trying to disagree with you.
No, yeah.
I just, be real about this. Look at where you are. You are in arguably the worst division in the NFL. The Bucs have not gotten massively better. I think the Saints are going to be 8-9 again and in cap hell again next offseason. The Panthers are going to be bad again. You had a chance to go add an impact player or trade down and add 2 impact players and to help you win a division. And you did nothing to help. I just don't get it. I think they probably had the worst draft with those 2 picks in mind. Any other picks or classes for you guys, especially after what we saw on Friday and Saturday, that just feel, we'll get to the good in a minute. We won't be all negative here. But any other ones that just make you feel like, what are you doing? Like even the Broncos, I get it. I don't like it. I don't think Bo Nix was worth a first-round pick. I do like that they got his best receiver from college. I think that's an interesting idea. Whether or not you like Troy Franklin, I can understand going for that. But even there, I get why they did it. I don't like it, but I get it. Anything else really leave you scratching your head after this weekend?
Well, the whole thing.
The Cowboys.
Okay. Well, all right.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. You jumped the line. Go ahead.
I just think that they were, Jerry Jones said they needed to hit on this offseason. I believe they traded back.
Yes, they did.
I just don't. They didn't really seem to get what a lot of people thought they needed to get. They got a tackle. Everyone's saying Tyler Guyton needs some work to be a starting tackle in the league. Also, they decided to re-sign, Ezekiel Elliott, who wanted to leave a couple of years ago because he wasn't going to get enough money. And now Zeke has nowhere else to go, and he's washed. And now they bring him back as essentially their RB1.
They're a team where, again, I get the picks they made. I would not have traded back for. I just would have taken Tyler Guyton where you were and saved the cap. I would have just picked them where they were at 24. I like Marshawn Neal and who they took. Cooper Beebe's going to start.
Yeah.
It sounds like he's going to start at center for them, which awesome. Cooper Beebe's going to be a good NFL player. I am certain of it. That's honestly, I think, probably their best pick.
I
overall.
agree.
But yeah, they had kind of a
it was a
weekend.
meh draft. To the point you were making about the Broncos, the Broncos drafting Bo Nix at number 12 overall is the thing that they absolutely had to do. They could not leave this draft without a quarterback. And it's not a bad decision given that framing, but all of the bad decisions they've made the last 8 seasons led them to the point where they had to draft Bo Nix with the number 12 overall pick. where they had to take the 6th quarterback on the board with the 12th overall selection. That's the problem.
No, I agree with
That's
that.
why the Broncos are in hell. Not necessarily like, I think it's as good a fit for what Sean Payton wants to do theoretically offensively as any of the other prospects would have been. I think that he wants a point and shoot accurate quarterback, and Bo Nix best fits that description. But ideally, you don't take that guy number 12 overall in the draft. And it's just not ideal circumstances for the Broncos right now. And that's their own fault. They made their own mess. And this is them kind of lying in the bed that they made, which is too bad, because I thought outside of the Knicks pick, I thought they had a really good draft. I really like what they did on day 3. They drafted some of my favorite guys in the draft. They ended up with Troy Franklin, like you mentioned, which A, you pair him with his college quarterback, which I think makes a lot of sense. And B, they need wide receiver depth. I love Chris Abrams strain out of Missouri in the 5th round. I talked about him in the pre-draft process. I love the way he plays, the attitude he plays with. He's going to bring, I think, some versatility to a Denver secondary that lost some leadership. And I wouldn't be surprised if Audric Estime ended up the best running back in this class. And they got him in the 5th round. I would not be surprised if he is starting over Javonte Williams.
The other team from the division, and again, we'll get to other outside the division things in a moment. What did you think of the Chargers? I get why some people did not like the Chargers draft. I liked it a lot. I thought they ended up with the best offensive lineman in the class. They took him at number 5. I actually think that is a decent spot for Ladd McConkey. He went 2nd pick of the 2nd round. I think it's a good spot because they don't necessarily need or even want a guy like I thought the Chiefs could use, who's a true XZ separator, outside ball winner kind of guy. I like what they did a lot. Not to the point where I'm going to jump on the annual tradition of Chargers going to win the division, because that's not going to happen. But I'm curious where you guys land on what LA did.
So they filled their wide receiver room. I wasn't high on McConkey as a Chiefs fit, but I think he maybe fits the Chargers a little bit better. Getting a guy with the upside of Brendan Rice in the 7th round, I thought was really nice as well. They drafted one of my favorite running backs in the draft, Kamani Vidal. I think they've got a really good running back room shaping up with him. And then the 2 guys they've imported from the Ravens, Dobbins and Edwards.
Yep.
And then in the 4th round, I'm going to butcher his last name, but Justin Eboigbe, from Alabama, was a monster in the Rose Bowl. And I guarantee you that is what Jim Harbaugh had on his mind when he said, hey, let's make the call and get this kid with the 105th overall pick. I think they got some upside. They drafted 2 Michigan guys Harbaugh will be familiar with. That'll be familiar with him. I think they got better. I really did like their draft.
Yeah, I saw one of the guys who, I think we've referenced this stuff before, one of the football is played on spreadsheets guys on Twitter, who was at the draft wearing a Chargers jersey and had a temper tantrum like a 2-year-old when the Chargers took Joe Alt, and was talking about how much he hated the draft pick, which is a great example of why being intelligent and knowing how to do math doesn't actually mean you know anything about football. I love that they took Joe Alt. And if you know literally anything about Jim Harbaugh, that pick should not have surprised you. Literally anything about the guy. The fact that they went with possession receiver, separator guy for the slot in McConkey, why they took a linebacker with a top 70 pick, why they wanted to go big, burly offensive lineman early on. None of that should surprise you. And yet, guys who think that football is played on a TI-84 calculator, my wide receiver. Oh my God. That drove me nuts. I loved the Chargers draft. I thought they had one of the best classes.
I'm looking at their potential depth chart on Our Lads.
Our Lads,
sorry. And I think it's for what they had to lose because of money-wise, their cap situation.
Yeah.
I think they got a pretty good haul, and you had a whole new regime coming in too. So that kind of changes some things of where you look at players and how they evaluate the players that are already on the roster. I think their draft filled out pretty nicely.
Yeah, I like theirs a lot. Elsewhere, what other drafts did you really like? What felt like, dang, this team genuinely improved, or at the same time, a fit? Give me a player who really fell into a good spot.
I'll give you a team first. I don't know how they managed this, but like winning teams stay winning for a reason. Philadelphia got 2 of the 3 best defensive backs in the whole draft at picks 22 and 40. Like the most obvious position of need for that team. And they ended up with 2 of the 3 best guys in the draft. and not at like a position where there was just nobody good. I'm not saying, oh, they got 2 of the 3 best guards and one of them they took in the 5th round. No, they got Quinion Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. That's a haul at a position they had a dire need at. They also went with Will Shipley, who I really like at running back.
Yes.
Yep.
So Philadelphia would be a team where I really, really loved their full draft class.
I mean, I think on paper, you look at that team from what they did over, like I feel like their draft mantra has been draft a defense. And I mean, you look up and down the depth chart: Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Bryce Huff, Josh Sweat. You know, just those guys that they drafted in the last few years.
Well, they didn't draft.
They didn't draft Huff, but you know, the first 2,
the guys that used to build the roster.
Yeah, like their defense is built so good, and adding those 2 guys in the secondary in the first 40 picks is going to be huge for them.
I would argue that I think they might be my favorite draft overall. The fact that they got Mitchell and DeJean, both of them should start for them next year. Jalix Hunt, the kid from Houston Christian, that felt like kind of a heat check. But after that, you go Will Shipley, who is going to play a bunch for them as a rookie running back. Anaya Smith, the wide receiver from A&M, there's your kick returner. Boom, your set of kick returner with the new kick return rules. Jeremiah Trotter, whose dad played for the Eagles for a long time and had a great career. He gets drafted in the middle of the 5th round. Trevor Keegan, good depth on the offensive line, another Michigan guy. Johnny Wilson in the 6th round. Why not? I thought Johnny Wilson might go day 2.
Yeah.
You got him in the 6th round. And then they got a center 6th round too. I don't know about Dylan McMahon from NC State. Other fits, Spencer, any player or team that you thought came out of this one looking really good?
The more I thought about it, after not liking a trade with a team in your division, I really like what the Commanders came away with.
I cannot believe you're optimistic about the Commanders. I'm shocked.
I thought it was a really good day 2 for them.
Yeah. On a serious note, I also like their draft.
I mean, I think they got a guy at left tackle in the 3rd round that could start. They need a guy at left tackle. Luke McCaffrey adds dynamicness to their receiver core that they didn't really have because Terry McLaurin is getting double covered and Jahan Dotson. Jury's still out on him for me. And then obviously you get Ben Sinnott, the guy from Kansas State, and I think he's a guy working under Zach Ertz this year, can change that tight end position for the team. Obviously Daniels at 2, the whole thing goes around Daniels. And then you drafted secondary guy, Mike Sanderstill.
I like a lot.
That's a great pick.
I really like that pick a lot. They were taking the Commanders pick a lot of guys I really like.
And then they got Newton, who was projected to go in the 1st round or at the beginning of the 2nd round.
I would
get him with the 24th pick in the 2nd round.
Yeah, and I know you were not super hot on that one at the beginning. I love that pick.
There was a way that I wanted that to go just based upon who was available and the fact that you had 2 picks right there at the top part in the first 8 picks of that round or 7 picks of that round.
Yeah.
I thought you had an opportunity to go somewhere
that
else.
Was one of those too good a player to pass up situations. Our favorite former Chiefs quarterback / commenter in the YouTube live chat, Lenny Dawson, says they thought the Colts had a great draft. I would agree. If you think Latu can be healthy, then I think you get a high upside pass rusher. And then they snagged A.D. Mitchell in the middle of the 2nd round, and that was huge.
They got a good defensive back too, Abraham from Marshall.
His
dad played in the league, and he is the GM for your favorite UFL team.
There we go. That's right. Yeah, I thought a lot of these made sense. I liked what Cincinnati did a lot. I think they made some smart decisions with their first couple of picks. Amarius Mims, future offensive tackle. He won't have to start this year, which I think is good for him. They got Chris Jenkins, who I love. I love Chris Jenkins.
Their DJ Reader replacement.
Yep. Eric All, the tight end from Iowa. Some people loved him. He goes in the 4th round. They've been looking for a true starting tight end for a long time. They went with Jermaine Burton in the 3rd round, though, as a wide receiver. Super high upside. There were also some people last week leading up to the draft who were like, yeah, I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole. Apparently there are some personality clashes that came up with Jermaine Burton that scared some teams off. But yeah, all of those I think really made a whole lot of sense. I talked earlier, one that didn't make a whole lot of sense to me was what Buffalo did. They needed to add a lot of talent, and they kept trading back, but they didn't add picks. And I did not love what they did. Keon Coleman could either be an all-pro or could be playing for the Michigan Panthers in 5 years. Like, his tape looks awesome. The the advanced metric stuff, thinks that he is going to be the bustiest of all busts. Like, terrible profile.
He definitely won his press conference. I will say that. He had the
personality is awesome.
Yeah, he had the Macy's coat. Definitely somebody worth rooting for. I shared this theory with Spencer and the listeners on Friday. I think Brandon Beane got deked out of the 28th pick by the Chiefs. The reason that he was willing to swap with the Chiefs is because I think he thought the Chiefs were going to get a tackle. And then the Chiefs got a wide receiver.
I think that's possible. I think that's definitely possible, in fact. One other team that I was left kind of scratching my head with, Miami. Miami goes Chop Robinson, who I know you liked a lot. I like Chop Robinson, too. Patrick Paul, another guy you liked a lot, who went second round.
Makes a lot of sense for them long term.
Jalen Wright in the 4th. They didn't have a third-round pick. The running back from Tennessee, Muhammad Kamara, edge rusher from Colorado State in the 5th. They just keep drafting the exact same players over and over. Pass rushers who literally only rush the passer and speed running backs.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. And it's worked. They've been better. Their offense is good. I think Chop Robinson will be a useful player. Like, why would you draft both Chop Robinson and Mo Kamara? They're the same player, just one's a better athlete. I don't get it. What is better about your team by adding Jalen Wright, whose number one thing is, well, he's fast? What are they getting better at?
That's all their running backs.
All of them.
Yeah.
There's no thunder and lightning. There's no punch, counter punch. It's just 3 of the same guy.
It's just ludicrous speed.
It's Devin Achane, who's got the highest upside, Raheem Mostert, who is just old Devin Achane, and now Jalen Wright, who you hope can be as good as Devin Achane. Like, that's all they have. That one I was very confused by. By the way, one other one. I loved the Rams draft. I like that one a lot. They probably didn't need to trade to get Braden Fisk. I wouldn't have done that probably, but I like their draft a lot. Jared Verse, Braden Fisk, Blake Corum as their top 3 picks. I liked Cameron Kitchens, the safety they got from Miami too. I thought they had a really strong draft.
I think for what
and Katie Leviston.
I think for what the Bears had, they had a decent draft. For what they had and the number of picks.
2 top 10 picks, they knocked them out of the park.
They had a fascinating draft.
And then they got a left tackle, the guy from Yale.
Who I did not know this. Not only is from Chicago, he is from my high school's rival high school. He's a Hinsdale Central kid, and thus the Bears will not be seeing the pearly gates. They will be turned away by St. Peter. I am not happy about that, or the fact that they took Austin Booker. That makes me sad.
I mean, I think it's a good draft, though. For them. Not for you as a Packer.
Right. Objectively a good draft.
But for a team that had 4 picks.
Real quick, because we have to get to a commercial here. Yay or nay? I know you're happy with Washington. Seahawks, yay or nay?
Love the Byron Murphy pick. They had to get better in the trenches. They appear to have done that. It was kind of an unsexy but necessary first draft for Mike McDonald.
Yeah, very much the same thing for Green Bay. Packers went into this with 3 major needs. Safety, or 4 really. Safety, offensive line, linebacker, backup quarterback. They spent all of their picks on those things and 1 running back. All 11 picks, 10 of 11 on just those 4 positions. Coming up a little bit later on, Matt Verderame will join us to break down the draft. First, though, a quick recap of the weekend with the good, the bad, and the ugly here on 580 Sports Talk. Real quick, let's recap the weekend with the good, the bad, and the ugly before we get to Matt Verderame. My good was an easy one. You may have noticed I was not here Thursday or Friday. Well, none of us were here Thursday. Thanks, Royals. I was in the mountains in Tennessee with all of my best friends. One of my closest friends since I was in fourth grade is getting married next month. So we spent a weekend out in the mountains hiking, played some baseball, watched the draft, grilled a bunch, hung out by the fire. It was a great weekend. Good to see all the guys.
Yeah, very cool. My good, and we're going to expand on this in the 4 o'clock hour, is that at some point next year, Kansas State is going to line up with a quarterback from Mays in the backfield and running backs from Junction City and Derby next to him. And that's pretty damn cool, especially because all three of those guys are freaking good.
Good for you?
My good is something that I hit on in the last segment. I think the Commanders building a roster under new regime, new head coach, new GM, new owner. I think they did what they needed to do this year, and you can see that maybe some guys that were drafted in the last couple of years, their spots aren't safe.
My bad. I had a great weekend. My bad is somewhat tongue in cheek, and we'll talk more about the KU and K-State guys who got drafted on tomorrow's show. Dominic Pooney went to the 49ers, and Austin Booker went to the Bears, the Packers' biggest rival, and the team that has tormented me for the last decade. What the hell? I'm extremely happy for them, but those were tough fits.
My bad. Minnesota Timberwolves coach Chris Finch tearing his patellar tendon after a player collided with him towards the end of last night's first round Western Conference game. That sucks. That's a extremely painful and brutal injury. Best wishes, Coach Finch.
My good or my bad and my ugly are the same thing, but I have shedded some light on it here. The Capitals were eliminated, first team eliminated in this year's playoffs. Sadly, I think TJ Oshie has been injured way too much, and it was his last go around. He's spending a little extra time out there on the ice last night.
No points for Ovi the whole series.
Yeah, that was the ugly portion of it all. Ovi didn't score a point, barely registered any shots on goal. I think he only had like 12 minutes, not even 10 minutes on ice yesterday. Things are starting to change in an interesting way, but they made the playoffs. So I'd rather have a team make the playoffs than not make the playoffs. The Penguins have missed the playoffs 2 years in a row now.
No ugly for me. I had a great weekend.
Ugly for me. I swear to God, I am so tired of that Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, Chet Holmgren commercial. I don't want to hear those dudes sing. I swear to God, please. I don't know what company that commercial's for. I just want it to go away.
Any ugly for you?
That was my ugly, was Ovechkin.
Paired him up. Perfect. Well, let's get to Matt Verderame. He'll join us after this commercial break on 580 Sports Talk.
Joining us on the Fleming Place Wine Spirits Hotline is Matt Verderame of many different outlets, Sports Illustrated, SI.com, the Matt Verderame Show on Patreon, also the Kansas City Sports Network. Matt joins us every Monday at this time here on 580 Sports Talk. Matt, we joked about it earlier, but you can tell us now, how big was your sigh of relief after Mr. Irrelevant was announced and the draft finally came to an end?
I think I drank about a gallon of gin afterwards. No, I'm just kidding. It was, I wanted to, but I'm a responsible adult with kids. I couldn't. It was a sizable relief. Like, the draft is fun. It's super important. But yes, by the end of it, I was basically face down on my office floor. It was a siege.
What in your mind was your biggest takeaway from the way that this draft unfolded?
The teams may start reconsidering the way they look at quarterbacks early in the draft. Like, I just don't see any world how the Falcons sat there at 8 and thought to themselves, you know, it would be great right here, Michael Penix Jr. Nothing against Michael Penix Jr., but that makes zero sense for Atlanta. And then Denver, I don't know that I literally yet to find one team that felt that he was worth the number 12 pick in that draft. Now, other than obviously the team that selected him. But I would even wonder if you gave them truth serum. Like, did they think he was worth the number 12 pick in the draft? Or did they just look at it and go, well, we don't have a second round pick and we couldn't get a trade down partner, so we're just going to take a shot here and draft this kid 30 slots higher than he should be drafted. I give the Vikings credit for not moving up and just, well, it was a one spot technically, but kind of just sitting there and taking McCarthy. But it seems like we've reached the point, like the Giants passed on McCarthy. The Pats, they ended up, they stood where they were at 3. They took May. As important as it is to get your quarterback, I do wonder if we're going to start to see a tipping point with this, where teams are so hyper aggressive in some cases that it burns them. And then they're going to look at other teams that maybe were a little more patient, like in Minnesota, and they go, you know what? Maybe that's the route to take moving forward. And maybe I'm a prisoner of the moment. That's not the case. But it seems like that draft, that first 12 picks, it was like we lost the plot a little bit with like how to actually draft successfully.
And to that point, Matt, you mentioned Minnesota and the fact that they pretty much lucked into McCarthy just landing there for them. I was wondering going into the draft, like they were a team, obviously, as an example, that needed to have a quarterback. But if you're not going to find a guy who you are so convinced is going to help get you to the next level or get you back to contention, why would you reach? It just feels like Atlanta for certain. I think Denver too. I mean, you could argue Minnesota too, even though they didn't have to move to get McCarthy. Like they get so overdrafted, quarterbacks do, and this felt like almost the zenith of that.
I just look at Penix and Nix in particular. They're both 24 years old. Penix has 2 torn ACLs in his past. He was not good at Indiana. A lot of it because he was hurt, but he wasn't good at Indiana. Goes to Washington. To his credit, plays very, very well. And listen, I was impressed by him. I thought he showed well at Senior Bowl, all that stuff. But like, he's not the 8th best player in that draft. There's no world where he's even close to the 8th best player in that draft. That draft is loaded. Bo Nix, to me, is even more egregious, like far more egregious in terms of just like his status in this class. Bo Nix was not just like average at Auburn before he transferred to Oregon. Bo Nix was horrific at Auburn. Like 59% of his passes were completed, horrific at Auburn. Then went to Oregon, where the scheme is just the absolute easiest scheme to play. I mean, he completed 77% of his throws in this game. Okay, and goes there. I watched him at the Senior Bowl. Was not impressed, but I couldn't find anybody who was. And look, maybe he turns out to be great, and if he does, God bless, good for him. Happy for the kid. But there's no way Denver honestly thinks Bo Nix is the 12th best player in that draft. Now, I get that if you're a quarterback, you are going to be drafted higher because of the value of the position. I mean, everybody gets that. But that is a wild situation for Atlanta specifically. I mean, in terms of just like, why are you doing this? And in Denver, like, I get why you're doing this, but like, why not use a signed Gardner Minshew or something and give it a year instead of now if Nix doesn't work, you're stuck for years with Bo. Like, this isn't like, oh, he's going to get 10 starts. Like, he's the 12th overall pick. he's getting years. And if he doesn't work, everybody's fired.
On the bright side of things, Matt, the optimistic side after the draft this weekend, what team or what couple of teams do you think came away with the best hauls overall?
I thought the state of Pennsylvania did pretty well. I thought the Steelers had a great draft. You know, they got three, in my opinion, starting caliber offensive linemen. You know, Troy Fautanu out of Washington, the guy who play guard or tackle. Mason McCormick is a guard all day out of South Dakota State. They got Zach Frazier, who's a center out of West Virginia. They got Roman Wilson in the third round at receiver, who I think a lot of people thought might even go late second. They got Peyton Wilson, who's a linebacker, who's first round production, but they got him third round because of the medical. We'll see how his knee holds up. But I thought the Steelers had a great draft. The Eagles get Cooper DeJean, and they get Quinion Mitchell in the first round at Toledo. A couple of corners where a lot of people thought both of them might be gone at 22. The Eagles ended up getting one at 22 and the other one in the second round. And I like Jalix Hunt, the linebacker out of the Southland Conference. So, I thought they did well. Look, I know a lot of people listening to this are curious about the Chiefs. I thought the Chiefs had a very strong draft. They gave them a B+. If you want to take out having to move up twice, I would have given it an A-. I think Worthy is a guy that, for my money, I would have graded him differently based on where he went. Like, I want to see him go to an offense with some motion in it, some creativity. You couldn't find a better offense than this. I mean, this or like the Shanahan offense was, to me, like the apex of where he could have gone. I wonder if the Chiefs hadn't have taken him, if San Francisco was. He's such a good fit for the Chiefs. And I just think on down the line, I mean, Sua Matai is a really good pass blocker already. He's athletic. I thought the Hicks pick in the fourth round was excellent. So I thought those teams all do. I thought Baltimore did well. I thought the Chargers did well. Alt, McConkey, Cam Hart, Brendan Rice. I thought those teams did a nice job.
We're chatting with Matt Verderame from Sports Illustrated. He joins us every Monday at this time on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits hotline here on 580 Sports Talk to talk all things NFL. If we're asking about the good, I've had to ask about the bad as well. Outside of the teams who made really dumb quarterback decisions this weekend, what other teams left you scratching your head a little bit?
I got to tell you, other than those teams, the number one team that I just don't get what they're doing was Buffalo.
Agreed.
I thought Buffalo's draft it was bizarre, very bizarre. Like, first of all, other than the shocker that was Penix, the weirdest thing that happened in that draft was Buffalo trading with Kansas City. Like, I don't know why it riles me up as much as it does. That is something that, honest to God, if Xavier Worthy ends up becoming a really good player, that is a fireable offense for Brandon Bates. Like, you just gave that team, this guy, a team that has beat you 3 of the last 4 years, a team that in all 3 of those playoff games, the reason you've lost is because you cannot stop them. And you gave them help to get Xavier Worthy. Like, whether or not the Bills had any interest in him or not, beyond the point. Like, if you're the Bills, hey, look, you make the Chiefs take him at 32 or trade up somebody else. I was shocked. And then after that, they drafted Keon Coleman, who, look, people are split on, understandably so. My concern with Keon Coleman, I know he's got big size. He wasn't that productive in college. He never had 800 yards. He ran a 4.6 40. And the big knock on Keon Coleman is, well, he can't get separation. Well, if he can't get separation against a bunch of guys who are about to be selling cars, like, that's the problem in the NFL. Then I thought, this is such a deep receiver class. I expected the Bills to take multiple receivers. They never took another receiver. They didn't do much to help their edge rush situation. They waited until late in the draft to take a center, when I think that's a fairly pressing need for them. And then, they took a guard from England who is like a rugby player with a hope. It almost felt like there was just like flailing. It was very bizarre to me. I felt like there was no clear plan as to what the Bills were trying to get done.
Matt Verderame, our guest here on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits hotline on 580 Sports Talk. Matt, going back to the Chiefs class, we were discussing it earlier and thought that at the very least, the top 4 picks in the draft, so Worthy, Sua Matai, Jared Wiley, the tight end at TCU, and Jaden Hicks, the safety from Washington State, all 4 of those guys are going to be on the 2 deep with a chance to play meaningful snaps. I guess my question to you is, how meaningful do you think those snaps are? Do you think Sua Matai can start week 1? Do you think Jaden Hicks is safety number 3 next year? What do you see as the roles for those 1st through 4th round Chiefs picks?
Well, Worthy, I think there's no question he's a starter. I mean, in this day and age, you start 3 receivers. And Rashee Rice very well might be suspended. So you're going to start him. He's going to see the field. Now, I think they'll try to kind of bring him along the same way they brought along Rice, which is kind of spoon feed him the first half of the year and then ramp him up. I don't know if they're going to have that luxury based on what's going on with Rashee Rice. Second rounder, Sua Taia. I am going to screw that name up 1,000 times, by the way. Sua Taia, if I could get that right. Yeah, I think he's going to have a chance to start. I think he'll compete with Wanya Morris. I think it's completely possible that he gets on the field week 1. Maybe even a slight favorite to do so. And then, look, I think Wiley probably is, of those 4 guys, probably the one buried the most. I think he's fighting for the 3rd spot on the tight end depth chart. Maybe you'll see some red zone snaps. Probably be more of a package player. Hicks is fascinating. Of all their choices, he to me was the best value. The question is just, and that is a loaded position group. I mean, you've got Reed, Cook coming back. Connor played really well last year. Like, I think he's going to get a handful of snaps, and I think he's going to be a very good player for the Chiefs. I just don't know if it's going to be next year because they have so many guys. But he's pretty versatile. You can put him in the slot, you can put him in the box, put him up high. I think he'll play here and there, but I do think that he's going to be fighting probably for that 3rd or the 4th role.
We're joined by Matt Verderame of Sports Illustrated here on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline. And Matt, just kind of breaking a few minutes ago from, I believe, Albert Breer. So everyone thought about 2 hours ago, Travis Kelce's contract was an extension through 2027. Apparently it's just a redo of his current contract. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, so I did not report earlier because I reached out to a source on this and was told that it was a raise and not necessarily an extension. But then there were all these other reports coming out from very reputable people that it was an extension. And so I circled back to the source. I was like, the source would know. I'm like, are you, like, what's going, like, when does this deal run through? And I didn't get a clear answer. So I was like, well, I don't know what to report because I don't want to be wrong. I'd rather be quiet than be wrong. And it appears that like the original thing that I was told is true, that the money was packed in, that it was a raise, that it's not going through 2027, it's going through 2025. They just made him the highest paid tight end in the league by packing some money in. Look, I mean, I think for the Chiefs, like, does it really change much? Like when it was reported that it was through 2027, I mean, really, it doesn't change much of the reality of the situation. Like, it was reported initially as like they're going to put guaranteed money in this year, which they're doing anyway, and then they're going to have 2025, which they already had, and then it was going to be like basically like, hey, if you want to keep playing, here's a contract that you can play on. That's all fine and well, but yeah, if he had retired after 2 years, the Chiefs wouldn't have been on the hook for any dead money. So I know it's bizarre and it probably seems like there's a huge difference. There's really not that big of a difference, except for the fact that if he wants to play through a 3rd or a 4th year from here, then yeah, the Chiefs would have to extend them. But he's not, like, if he wants to play in 2026 and that's it, the Chiefs aren't going to tell him to kick rocks and go finish with the Cardinals. Like, I just can't see that happening. So in the end, look, the bottom line is they wanted to give him a raise. In the words of the source I was speaking to, a well-deserved raise. And I think they looked at it like, hey, this is an opportunity to kind of say thanks, make sure his last 2 years are done the right way. And yeah, that's it. I don't think in the end, really, there's much difference, even with the confusion in the language.
Matt, real quick before we get you out of here, wanted to go back to the draft, talking about the team perspective here. In terms of players, was there anyone who you were really interested in, probably thinking day 2 or day 3, who you thought fell into the perfect spot?
I thought watching the way it all unfolded, I really did think that a lot of the classes this year were good classes. Some years you'll look at a guy and go, oh man, they really reached there. I thought it was, an interesting, when you looked at when you looked at, Pittsburgh getting McCormick, he was a guy that went, in I believe it was the 4th round. You're like, okay, that kid, some people thought was day 2. That's just a natural fit. I thought, I quite honestly, I thought that Brendan Rice going to the Chargers in the 7th round, kid that, I looked at it and went, okay, well, he's going to have an opportunity to actually get real snaps because they don't have any receivers outside of McConkey. So, he's going to get a chance to compete. It was a year of watching, I think, mostly the board go the way it should, overshadowed by the fact that a quarterback went with 8th to a team that just paid a guy $180 million. But yeah, I think there were a handful. Honestly, Kamal Hatton with Kansas City was a guy that you looked at and go, well, if there's ever a team that's going to take a guy that's 6'1", 200 pounds and can play some press, I mean, it's them. Like that kid is heaven sent as far as the Chiefs are concerned, as long as he can stay healthy. So yeah, there were a few guys that you looked at and think, you know what, that's a pretty good spot.
I believe you told us last week, Matt, that when the draft ended, you were going to drink the ocean. How big of a sigh and how big of a beverage did you have when the 7th round finally ended?
I went to a brewery with my father, who was visiting from out of town, and I think I had 3 shandies and whatever the hell else, something else. But it wasn't quite the ocean. It was like a small lake. But it was the best night of sleep I got in quite some time. And now I can be the nerd that I am and be excited for the schedule release, because that is the 3rd day of the draft is the hardest day, in my opinion, to cover the NFL. It is like, remember when you were in school and you're sitting there and you're like, it's like the last day of school and you're like, man, 3:00.
Oh yeah.
And it's summer vacation and it's noon. And then you look down, you do some worksheet, you get yelled at by your teacher, you're talking to somebody behind you, then you look back up at 12:01. That's the 3rd round of the draft. So, or the 3rd day of the draft. So schedule release, OTAs, I'll take that all day long.
Matt Verderame covers the National Football League for Sports Illustrated and SI.com. He is also the host of the Matt Verderame Show on Patreon and That Football Show over at the KC Sports Network, joining us every Monday here on 580 Sports Talk via the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline. Matt, thank you as always for all the insight. Enjoy getting to take a deep breath for a little bit, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Take care.
That's Matt Verderame from Sports Illustrated. Awesome coverage of the NFL draft. We have to get to the news. When we come back, we'll lead off the 4 o'clock hour with K-State's big portal weekend on 580 Sports Talk. now 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk coming your way. Brendan Dworzinski, Dan Lucero, and Spencer Dupuis all here with you in studio today. Good to be back after a long weekend in the mountains of southern Tennessee. You ever been to? No, you've been to Tennessee. You've done work in Tennessee, not like full time.
No, I've been to
Memphis.
Yeah, I've been to Memphis many times. Been to Sewanee up on the Magical Mountain.
Oh yeah,
down there in South Central Tennessee. So yeah, I'm familiar. I would say, I know some of the Tennessee hills. I don't know if one of them was good old Rocky Top or not. I don't think it was, probably.
So Rocky Top itself is, I think, if I'm not mistaken, kind of more of like a concept of rural Tennessee, Appalachia than a real place.
Yeah, I think that's right.
But then a town on the border, I think with Georgia, actually changed its name to Rocky Top a few years ago. Total tourist trap.
Yeah.
Like the whole purpose is just, oh yeah, of the volunteers. Hey, we're Rocky Top. Hey.
Yeah, sell postcards and magnets and shot glasses and other things.
Leave the majesty of people who get their corn from a jar in Knoxville, please.
Tennessee is the first place where I ate frog legs and alligator.
Interesting.
So
we saw live alligators in a souvenir crap store while we were there. They advertised live alligators, and my buddy's brother was like, we have to go. I need to see the gators. It was one little dwarf alligator in a really cramped enclosure.
So such a tourist trap for that Rocky Top. They want you to drive 26 minutes from downtown Knoxville.
Unbelievable. Embarrassing. I should say, in that same souvenir crap store, I bought a hat. It's camo. It has a fish on it and says, kiss my bass.
I saw that on Twitter.
It was $10, and it's one of the greatest things I've ever purchased. I should have worn it today. I might wear it tomorrow. It's awesome. One of the other guys in the group bought one that was camo with a fish and said, bite me on it, because it had the hook. It was so good. I will be back in Tennessee very shortly. We're going to get to some K-State news here in a moment. Wild weekend in the portal for Kansas State. So we'll get to that. What is wrong with you? Our April semifinals coming up. And we will also hear from Brett Veach coming up at the bottom of the hour. Veach finished up speaking just a little bit ago. We've got the majority of his post-draft press conference to get to. Also talked about Travis Kelce and his new deal. Of course, you are welcome to be a part of the show. 580 Sports Talk is the name of the YouTube channel, and you can also find us on the Top City Metal Supply text line. 785-272-9429 is that text line number. Why don't we start with football for K-State, because that was the biggest news of the weekend for the Cats. Dylan Edwards commits to K-State. Last year was the leading rusher for Colorado. We remember the saga from a year ago. He was committed to K-State, flipped to Notre Dame, then ends up flipping again and goes to Colorado. He had a tight relationship with Deion Sanders, had that incredible first game of the year against TCU, and it looked like, oh my God, football will never be the same again. The Coach Prime buffs are going to change the sport for good. The rest of the year did not quite follow the same pattern for Colorado. I don't know what happened with Dylan Edwards and Coach Prime and that staff specifically, but he hit the portal. That was a big loss for Colorado, no doubt about it. And there was a report last week that a number of different schools were interested. I think without getting any sort of insider information, we all kind of knew how that was going to unfold. I think most people, even though Nebraska was involved, A&M was involved, we had been told by Michael Swain that KU was at least going to reach out and say, hey, where are you? Are you interested at all? I think we all sort of knew he was going to end up at K-State.
So as an outside person that didn't really know about this prior situation, hearing about that prior situation, then what Fitz told us last week about the door never really being closed.
Yep.
And then the fact that, guess who he's really good friends with? Well, his family's really good friends with them too.
Avery Johnson.
Yep.
So
to me, once I heard that, I was like, he's committing to K-State.
It just made too much sense.
Avery Johnson wasn't going to do the things that he did on social media the day that the news that Edwards hit the portal was official. If he didn't have at least a pretty good feeling that they were going to be Peaches and her reunited and feel so good in a matter of days. And it was just a matter of dotting I's, crossing T's, making sure the visit was a good one. It was a good one. And I think what this story goes to show, beyond the on-the-field impact here, which we'll get to in a second, because I think the on-field impact is substantial, potentially, for Kansas State 2024, 2025 as well.
Mm-hmm.
It goes to show you that even though we are in a new era of college athletics, we are in the transfer portal and NIL era, and we hear from people all the time who say that it makes it harder to root for college teams the same way that they used to, that they don't like it. I hear the words ruin a lot, which I think the TV ratings would beg to differ, that nothing's actually being, I mean, people still watching this stuff. So like people are still buying tickets. Nothing's been ruined, but I do think it is different. It is a different experience to root for a college team. It's a different experience to root for your alma mater and get attached to kids who commit to your school, because that commitment is not the 4-year commitment that it used to be. Those things are all true. And there are now more out in the open ways that the powerful programs can get the best talent. That's much more on the table than under the table, which was the way it used to be. But with all that being said, this Dylan Edwards story goes to show that there is still no replacement for feeling like you want to be at home, for feeling like you want to have relationships with more than just your head coach and a couple of your teammates. There's no replacement for building that relationship over time in the recruiting process. Because if those things didn't exist, Dylan Edwards might have gone somewhere else. Dylan Edwards might be a Nebraska Cornhusker. Dylan Edwards might be a Texas A&M Aggie or a Louisville Cardinal. But the relationships that Dylan Edwards formed over the course of the recruiting process, and the fact that Kansas is home to him, those things mattered. And sometimes those things are going to matter more than a bag, more than an NIL deal, more than the flash and the pomp and the circumstance that some of the larger programs or the more prominent programs are going to be able to offer you.
The only way I can see a K-State fan feeling negatively about this and like having any sort of basis in reality is if you are worried that he is a bag chaser, to use the popular vernacular, and you think, well, we're only going to have him for 1 year and he's going to leave again when someone offers him a big amount of money. Even if that is the case, and for the record, I do not think that is the case. I do not. I agree with what you had to say. Even if you believe that, what is better? To have that talent on your team for 1 year or not at all?
1 year.
One year. What is even the point of being worried about that? I think this also is a great lesson. If you have not already learned it, you are too old to not have learned it at this point. I'm just speaking generally. There were a lot of people. You know this because I know you saw a lot of it at the time when he flipped from K-State and that, well, first it was kind of wishy-washy, finally commits to K-State, then it was to Notre Dame, then Colorado. There were some folks, I'm not calling anyone out in particular because every fan base has people who say really nasty things. There were some people who said really nasty things about Dylan Edwards, about Leon Edwards, about the family, about like anyone under the age of 25 in general, like really hateful things about a teenager who was just trying to figure out, what do I want to go to the place where I've been a fan since I was a kid where my dad played, or go follow a guy who's like a second dad to me? Said some frankly kind of disgusting things about, again, a teenager. This is why, well, A, don't be weird to kids. That's thing one. Thing two, in a sports and college football context, the door is never closed. And that guy who you said gross things about a year ago might come back and be the best player on your team the next year. I know a lot of people do not like where college sports is now and the transferring and the change in roster all the time. And some people still get really upset about NIL rights and all of those things.
And we're sympathetic, I think, as a group to some of that feeling like, man, we used to be able to tell the players without a scorecard, and now we can't. And it is different. Just like it was different when the NFL introduced free agency for the first time, or when the reserve clause was struck down in Major League Baseball for the first time. Like it is different now in a way that is hard to become accustomed to.
But this is why I think this is a good example of why it is important to adjust, because someone who you said, I would never root for him, You might be one of the people who said that a year ago who now thinks, yes, he's my favorite player. I cannot wait to spend money, pay money to Wildcat NIL so I can get a Dylan Edwards jersey. Because, hey, I'm from Derby, or I'm from the Wichita area. Hell yeah. I want an Avery Johnson. I want a DJ Giddens. I want a Dylan Edwards. This is the game now. And even if you don't like it, this is how it works. And this is, when recruiting battles that used to be, you lost, you had a sour taste in your mouth, you probably rooted against or hated that kid for their whole college career, maybe into the pros. Now, that door is always open.
Mhm.
Always open.
Yeah.
So you can't write someone off or say things that you will regret saying because they might be coming to play for your favorite team the next year. If you want another example, KU basketball, just comparison's sake, missed out on Rylan Griffin twice. They didn't prioritize him out of high school, even though he said, I want to play for you. Didn't prioritize him in the portal last year. He ends up just staying at Alabama after his freshman year. This year, by all reports, Self and company went to him and said, hey, we screwed up. Like, we want you. We should have taken you before. We want you to come. Boom. He's a Kansas Jayhawk. You have to keep those relationships open. And that's why Dylan Edwards is a K-State player. And that's why K-State is a better team today than they were this time last week.
They have added a dynamic playmaking talent. I know that the TCU game ended up being a little bit of fool's gold as it came to what Colorado was able to do offensively.
Mhm.
Once, A, they played against teams that had film on them, and B, played against teams who could dominate them physically in the trenches because, once again, Colorado had one of the worst offensive lines in the country last year and a quarterback who loves to hold on to the ball just a tad too long. Then they didn't hit those heights again.
Mhm.
But the TCU game still happened. Go watch Dylan Edwards. He was one of the best players on the field in his first college game. His blend of speed, ludicrous, hot, nasty, badass speed in the open field, the ability to create space for himself in the open field, the ability to catch passes, not just out of the backfield either, but lined up in the slot as a receiver. He is going to be an all-purpose, all-over-the-field offensive weapon for the Kansas State Wildcats this coming year. We have a texter from the 785 on the Top City Metal Supply text line who asks, does the commitment of Edwards, does that mean that DJ Giddens is gone? No, it does not.
No, those two could not possibly complement each other better.
No, this is the backup or the running back number 2 option that Kansas State really needed. So you don't have to give DJ Giddens 30 carries next year because everybody behind him was really unproven. And look, Giddens is a workhorse. If anybody can handle it, it's him. But how much better is Giddens going to be for the long haul where he only has to maybe get 20, 25 touches a game? And you can lean on a talent like Dylan Edwards for the other 10 touches, the other 10, 15 touches in a game. There is no reporting, no rumors, nothing, no smoke around a DJ Giddens transfer. He's the running back number 1 next year. He and Dylan Edwards are going to be thunder and lightning, and it is going to be something to see. Kansas State could have one of the most exciting offenses in the country in 2024 with those two guys and Avery Johnson in the same backfield.
I'll go further. I will say it's more than could. They should. Like that group. And I know, if you got questions about exactly what'll tight end look like with Sinnott gone, wide receiver, I'm probably a little more bullish on the receivers than maybe some folks are, which is a strong departure for me. This should be a top 2 Big 12 offense. And frankly, I think it'd be almost disappointing if they're not. Barring injury or something. Like the talent level of just that starting backfield is superior to any other starting backfield in the conference.
I'm having trouble thinking of one where,
like Ollie Gordon's great. I think KU's is going to be very good.
And in Alan Bowman, it's great to have a 27-year-old veteran, in your at quarterback.
The Oklahoma State staple.
Yes. But no, man, like the ceiling, the upside, the explosiveness, the home run hitting ability in that backfield.
Mhm.
Holy cow.
It's awesome.
Like there's going to be some stuff they do in the run game. And obviously, like K-State's offensive line is kind of starting from scratch. They lose all their guys. So they're going to start from scratch a little bit in the spring and in the summer going into the fall. But when have we known K-State to be subpar on the offensive line? There may be some growing pains with a younger group this year, but if they're just
That's why you play non-conference games.
Yes, exactly. If these guys are just decent up front, there are going to be some plays and some highlights that are going to be some of the best you've ever seen wearing that uniform.
Yeah. I agree with you 100%. K-State is way better with Dylan Edwards on this team. There's no doubt. Basketball-wise, up and down weekend, in my opinion. Maybe everyone else feels differently. So Friday, Brendan Housen commits, the sharpshooter from Villanova. If I like him so much if he's like your 6th or 7th guy. I don't know that I love him as a starter. As a guy off the bench who's going to be your instant offense shooter, love it. Absolutely nails. Love that addition. Bay Fall commits. He was originally committed to, he's from Dakar, Senegal. He's an international player.
Yes. Moved to Denver when he was 15 years old. He played at a smaller school, a private school, Denver Lutheran, won a state title there, transferred to a prep school, actually got dismissed from the team at his first prep school, then ended up at another prep school in the Denver area for his final year of eligibility. McDonald's All-American, commits to Arkansas, plays 9 games as a true freshman.
Yeah, and I know some people, I've seen KU fans who have been kind of mocking about it almost. I don't know how much of him not playing and not being especially good in that limited time was he's just too much of a project. I don't know how much of that is Eric Musselman might not have been really all that interested in coaching Arkansas this past season. Depending on who you ask, you're going to get different answers about that. You had to get a big man. That's good. The upside, ridiculous. Super, super high ceiling for Fall. I think there's also a risk of a fairly low floor with him, but there is potential there. I like it. You took a swing. You went and got your guy, even if he wasn't one of your top choices. That's a good thing, even if I'm iffy on what he's going to look like this next coming year. You lose Day-Day Ames, though. That's the tough one for me, because how many times in the last month have you heard me say, build the future of this team around the incoming freshman David Castillo, Day-Day Ames, RJ Jones, and Buddy Rich? Well, RJ Jones leaves, probably the weakest of that 3-man returning group. You replaced him with Housen, who's got multiple years of eligibility. You can live with that. I liked Ames' game a lot, and it felt like the last, 9-10 games of the year that K-State played, it felt like it clicked. It felt like he really started to come into his own and was able to do what Jerome Tang wanted of him as a freshman and was primed for a big jump next year when he was going to be asked to do a whole lot more. I like his game. I know there's talk out there about, well, he's got handlers and this whole thing. I don't know the details. I just know that I personally believe this is a big loss for this team, especially long term.
This would have been a really nice player to have. And you want as many guys as possible to build a foundation, to build a culture foundation for your program. So the guys with multiple years of eligibility are valuable to have, whether that's a kid you recruit as a true freshman or whether that is somebody you bring in from the portal who plays at your school for 2 to 3 years, like a Brendan Housen might or a Doug McDaniel might. But you need those multi-year guys. You just can't keep building a new roster from scratch year in and year out. That's where it helps to have freshmen who stay in and stay bought in with your program. I do wonder what changed, because everybody was pretty convinced that all 3 of the freshmen were locked in. Like a lot of the insiders felt like, oh yeah, these guys are committed. These guys want to be here. These guys understand what the portal could make it look like, but they feel like they're committed. But this is true in any sport, at any school. If you get recruited over, you might start to look at your other options. And that's what Kansas State has done this year, is they looked at their roster last year, which I remind people did not make the NCAA tournament. And they said, we got to get better. We got to raise the ceiling of our talent. We got to do it right away, because the expectation changed when Jerome Tang year 1 went to the Elite Eight.
Correct.
The expectation is to make the tournament every year. No rebuilding years. How many times do you think we sat here toward the end of the Weber era? And boy, I loved that freshman class with the Gordons. Remember Antonio Gordon?
Oh, how could I forget?
Deshaun Gordon. And who's the other one? Montavious Murphy. The Davion Bradford. How many freshmen did we sit here and say, hey, there might be something there with this kid? And they look like they got some real, they're not very good right now, but give it some time to grow. And then it didn't grow.
Was that the 19 class or 18?
I think
it was 19.
19.
Yeah, your 5-man class, Dejuan Gordon, Montavious Murphy, Good News Capijal. Remember him?
I do. Bad news for good news. I don't believe he's resurfaced in Division I men's basketball.
David Sloan, who was the JUCO transfer, and then Antonio Gordon.
Yes, David Sloan, the only actual point guard on that team. That was a cursed year of basketball.
Yes, it was.
It's been an interesting kind of 12 days for Kansas State, if you think about it. With like kind of the 17th is Jarrell Colbert. That's when he entered the portal. And then, obviously earlier than that, you had Doug McDaniel make his commitment. But then CJ Jones, just 2 days before that, he makes his commitment. Then you lose, in the last week, you lose Kaluma going to the draft. You lose RJ Jones, and now you lose Day-Day Ames. You get back Brandon Housen
and with the
CJ Jones.
And with the Kaluma thing, I mean, that, and you're right, not to disagree with your point, but like the Kaluma thing, that's his own choice. He's moving on. The other things you have to make, it's the gamble that you take in college basketball.
Yeah, and
it is, are you winning? Are you trying to placate the guys you have for the thoughts that they could become something, or do you go with guys who you think are more likely to be a sure thing?
And if I could get back to the point that I was trying to make regarding those freshmen that we saw towards the end of the Weber era, like the thought is nice. Okay, we've got some guys and we're going to grow something and it's going to be competitive. And sometimes it works out. Sometimes it's the Barry Brown, Dean Wade class.
Right.
Like Dean Wade's an NBA player. Did you watch Day-Day Ames and RJ Jones and think that's an NBA guy? I didn't. I thought that they could be good Big 12 players, but is that good enough for you if you're a Kansas State fan to have, good big, maybe have good Big 12 players? Or do you want to go out and get a guy, maybe he's only got 1 year of eligibility, but he's got 15 points a game in the SEC last year and 30 and 40-point games all over the schedule in Khalif Battle, who is the next big target that Kansas State is hoping to land out of the transfer portal. They are trying to elevate the talent level in such a way that a year like last year where they missed the tournament doesn't happen again. And that means sometimes you recruit over the talent you have, because the talent they had on hand last year didn't make the NCAA tournament.
I agree.
And it's just, this is the reality of college basketball in the transfer portal era, is you are always looking to upgrade your roster. And the surest, fastest way to do that is through the portal. And if that means you're upgrading over some rising sophomores, some guys that maybe played a little bit last year and you like their long-term potential, but trying to win basketball games in the toughest basketball league in America right now. And K-State's chances are better with a backcourt of Doug McDaniel and Brendan Housen and Khalif Battle than they were last year or this coming year, looking at a backcourt of RJ Jones and Day-Day Ames and David Castillo and maybe Quez Glover off of a year that he didn't play at all. Like, they have upgraded the talent level. It is disappointing, though, to lose a guy like Day-Day Ames, because we did get to see him improve last year. And I do think there's still a ceiling for him. I do think he's a Power 5 or a Power 4. Yeah, I guess it's Power 5 in college basketball. You count the Big East. I do think he's a Power 5 player, but K-State recruited above him because the standard is higher than being on the bubble all year and missing the tournament.
And it should be. And the idea, right, is that winning begets more winning, and winning on the court begets winning in recruiting, right? And then the guys you're bringing in, Day-Day Ames, nice player. The idea is you're going to bring in guys who you think are going to leave in 2 years because they're leaving to go be a lottery pick, right? Like that's what you want to be. And that's what Jerome Tang wants. He's coached those guys before. That's what you want to get to, the place you want to be. You got to win first, and last year's group didn't win enough. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
And
Jerome Tang's trying to get this team not just in the tournament, but deep in the tournament. And the way you do that right now in this current state of college basketball, you do it with veterans and not with, sophomores typically.
We'll hear from Brett Veach a little bit later on this hour, his thoughts on the Chiefs draft this year. But first, we have to find our finalists for the month in What Is Wrong With You. That's coming up next on 580 Sports Talk. reached the April semifinals in What Is Wrong With You here on 580 Sports Talk. 4 stories will go head-to-head today. 2 will survive and will advance on to the monthly championship coming on tomorrow. Our first battle of the month. Our first story is, don't assassinate me, bro. Going to Orange City, Florida, where a Volusia County man is facing charges after deputies say he accidentally shot a roommate in front of 2 small children, mistaking comments that the victim made as part of an ongoing series of drills to, quote, stay vigilant. These were our 2 guys who didn't have to get ready because they always stay ready. They were a little bit too ready when Brad Markey Perez shot his roommate.
Because his roommate came out of the kitchen and said, quote, bro, I could assassinate you right now in the blink of an eye. Those comments, combined with Markey Perez believing that the victim had something in his hand, caused him to rise up, point a gun at him, and then accidentally hit the trigger, striking a victim in the jaw.
This is after the mother of the children, we do not know her relationship to either of the men, had asked them multiple times to please stop.
The roommates confirmed they often conduct drills to stay vigilant in their surroundings by trying to get the jump on each other. Usually the guns are not loaded or they use non-functioning rounds. Usually. Not always.
Yeah, usually. Maybe this should have been one of those times. Just absolutely abysmal. So that is semifinalist number 1. Dan, why don't you share our number 1 seed?
The Unholy Orgy is the name I finally landed on. Polish priest identified only as Tomas Z has been sentenced to 18 months in jail for sex and drug crimes after a man collapsed during an orgy at his home after he took too many erectile dysfunction pills. An ambulance was called, but paramedics were refused entry and only able to administer aid after police arrived.
Everything about this is just so vile and wrong, and I just can't. I can't. This wins. The other guys shot each other. It is very hard to overcome a story where a roommate shoots his other roommate as part of a series of drills to stay vigilant.
I love Mark's idea. They should use water guns. Then they just get wet.
That is a great point. That is a very good idea.
And the police would not be involved.
Yes, you get to keep the police out of it.
Our guy
No
Mark
felonies,
is
whatever.
clearly smarter than the 2 rubes in that story, but yet they still do not beat out the unholy orgy. It's so vile.
Why is the priest throwing a sex party in the first place?
Our second semifinal, it is 37 years down the drain. It is the cop from Cambridge, Massachusetts, who was in a school, went to the bathroom, took his gun out of his holster, hung it on the coat rack in the stall, and it went off.
Hung it by the trigger guard, which seems like a really good way to accidentally discharge a gun. And in fact, it was. No one was hurt, but Officer Frank Greenidge was reassigned.
Shocking. We call that one 37 years down the drain. Dan, our final semifinalist is the spaghetti incident.
Yes, a pregnant woman in her car covered in spaghetti after a road rage incident in Indianapolis. On April 17th, a woman called 911 saying a driver had flashed a gun at her during a road rage incident. She got cut off making a right turn and then brake checked. After she made it around the driver, that driver showed a gun, followed her, and as they came to a stop, that driver took a container of spaghetti and threw it, and some of it got in the car on her.
That's extreme. Why are you throwing spaghetti? What a rude thing to do. Just really demeaning more than anything. All right, who wins this battle?
This is a tough one.
It really is.
It is. I think it is too. I think I am going to go with the indignity of the spaghetti incident. That's going to get my vote.
Who throws spaghetti at somebody?
Right.
Like, both of these are really stupid. Like, who does that? But
yeah,
like, who throws spaghetti?
Right, exactly. Does that get your vote?
Yes, it does.
All right, that sets up our championship round for tomorrow. We will have the spaghetti incident versus the unholy orgy. That is our April championship tomorrow on What Is Wrong With You. Right now, though, we have to get to a break. We'll hear from Brett Veach next on 580 Sports Talk. General Manager Brett Veach spoke to the media just a little bit earlier this afternoon. Let's hear what he had to say about the Chiefs draft and a new deal for Travis Kelce.
First, want to start off by congratulating Travis Kelce on his contract adjustment. Just signed it here a few minutes ago. Hard to put into words what Travis means to this organization, this city, and was certainly a priority to adjust his contract for us. And it was something that was important for Clark. So very fitting that Travis is now the highest paid tight end in these 2 years. I want to thank his agents, Michael and Greg, for all their hard work. Chris Shea, Jack Woloff on our side for all their hard work. So again, just a really special day and moment for this organization to once again recognize arguably one of the greatest tight ends to ever do it. Additionally, we have certainly a lot of draft stuff to talk about, and really proud of the work that my staff did this weekend in conjunction with our coaching staff to bring 7 new additions to this organization, and got some verbals on some free agents we're really excited about, and those won't be official till Friday. So certainly lots to talk about, and with that, I'll take your questions.
Hey, Brett, wanted to ask about Travis's extension. You've got some other guys who are coming due, as you know, next year. So I just wanted to ask you what went into the decision to extend his contract now. And Sid, I'll have a second question as well.
Yeah, well, we do have some younger guys coming up, and like always, once the draft settles down, we'll have a chance to address all those players and work through that. Travis is an outlier here. I mean, I think we all know that when you talk about Travis and his career and his legacy here. This is something we just wanted to knock out of the park early on, and then like you mentioned, Adam, just shift our focus to the young guys coming up, and we'll have a long runway now until the preseason starts. I know the OTAs have started now, but we'll have a little runway here until we get to St. Joe's, and we'll spend our time working. I'll work with Chris and Jack on our side, and work with these guys and their agents.
How long do you see Travis playing for the Chiefs, and not just playing, but being the player he's been and everything else he's been for the organization? How long do you see that continuing?
Well, I mean, every now and then you have one of these guys that are outliers, and certainly Travis is one of those players. It's funny, it's not even May yet, and today we had a chance to get out there in phase 2, and guys were out there running around, and Travis was the first guy in line, and I mean, he looked like he was 28 years old, and again, I mean, the odds of someone playing this far into the 30s are very low, but it does happen, and it happens with just unicorns in the profession, and Travis is one of those, and we'll certainly celebrate this with him, and hopefully we can ride this thing even longer. So we'll just have to wait and see, but he's shown no signs of slowing down, and everyone notices the kind of postseason he had, and he just found that extra gear. And these special players are always able to find that extra gear, and again, I mean, if anybody can do it, Travis can.
Hey, Brett, now that the draft is over, I just wondered what needs, if any, you feel like you still need to address in free agency.
Well, I mean, look, we accomplished a lot between the free agency period and the draft, and now I think we'll have a chance to really evaluate these young guys and evaluate these new players we brought in on our 90-man signings and right after the season, and with the undrafted free agent guys we got. So we'll have a chance to evaluate this team. I think we spoke about this over the weekend. I don't think you're ever satisfied with what you have as a roster, and there's always ways to improve. And I think the important thing is just to make sure that we have competition and battles at every position group coming into going into St. Joe. So now we get to spend the next few weeks watching these guys and seeing how they move out there, and it's a good gauge to predict how these competitions will go. And I think once we get through the next few phases of these OTAs, we'll huddle up as a staff, both personnel and coaching, and see if we have enough competition at all these positions, and if we need to go in a different direction before training camp, we will. But I think now we're excited with where the roster is, and look forward to the final OTA periods.
Hey, Brett, I know we haven't talked to you about the day 3 picks just yet, but what intrigued you most about Jaden Hicks and getting him in the 4th round?
Yeah, he's one of the, every now and then, especially like where we pick in the draft, the tight ends, it just seems to be like the last few years harder to find tight ends in the draft than it had been in the past. And I think you do get a chance, depending on where you pick, maybe to select a receiving tight end or a blocking tight end. But these combo tight ends are hard to find. And I think the thing that intrigued us about Wiley was the fact that, I mean, he's a big kid, former quarterback, athletic, can run, but a guy that can certainly hold up in line and will get better as a blocker, but, can block, will block. And then, that receiving skill set he has, I think it's just, unique to add a true combo tight end on this roster. So certainly excited about, that prospect there. And, we had guys in the past like Blake Bell and some other guys down the line, but I just think, Travis is the best at what he does, and Noah Graves has done some really outstanding things for us the last few years. Noah plays a ton of reps on special teams, and having another bigger body to kind of be interchangeable with those two players was really important for us.
Brett, I'd like to ask you about a couple guys if I can. First up, Kingsley. Where did you guys have him on your board? I know a lot of people thought he might be a late first rounder. Which side will he play on? And I want to ask you about another guy too.
Yeah, I mean, we had him up there obviously really high, and have to be prepared for all type of scenarios, and depending on how the draft unfolded. And again, you never know. I think we had a pretty good indication of just with the number of quarterbacks this year and the number of other offensive linemen that there'd be a chance a player like Xavier may slide to where we pick, but he was certainly in one of those top 25 to 40 considerations, and he was potentially consideration of 32. He's potentially consideration, how do we trade it down? So to have the draft unfold like it did and be able to select him at 63, feel very fortunate and lucky. And as far as position, I mean, he's played both right and left tackle, and I think plans are to throw him right there at left tackle and let him compete and battle with Wanye, and we'll see where it goes. And mentioned before the draft that certainly liked some of the things we saw out of Wanye last year, and it was our job to bring in competition. And I think those guys will be excited to compete with one another and look forward to that battle at training camp, but also know that Kingsley has played on the right side too. So I think that there's a lot of versatility and value there.
I want to ask you about the kid from Penn State, interior, center, possibly guard. Creed had a few snap issues last year here and there. Is this bringing someone in to push him? What position do you see Hunter playing at?
Well, really, I mean, when you lose a guy like Nick Allegretti, I mean, those guys are hard to replace, and, like some of the things Mike Caliendo did last year. But when you have a guy that, these are long seasons, and these are week in and week out, there's a physical toll that these players have to undertake. So it's one of those things where it was always comforting knowing you had a guy and a player like Nick Allegretti, who, if needed or pressed into service like he was last year in the playoffs, can come in and can play center, can play guard, and get you out of the game there. And when you look at Hunter and his career, I mean, the kid started out playing tackle, and then he transferred to Penn State, played guard, played center. So extremely smart kid. I think he had a mechanical engineering degree, and but one of those guys that we feel has a tremendous amount of upside, but also almost seeing like that Nick Allegretti role, where I think he can come in and certainly will compete like the rest of the guys do. But I think we have a high amount of confidence in him, knowing his background, knowing how smart he is, that he can come in and play quality reps and provide quality starts if needed.
Thanks, Sydney. I got two questions, if you don't mind. First one, Brett, you talked a little bit there, the details about Kingsley and Hunter, but kind of big picture wise, addressing offensive line with 3 different draft picks, was that the priority coming in? Was that just a good opportunity? And how do you kind of feel like that position's come together now?
Well, we lost a few guys in the offseason. So, I mean, Donovan Smith was a free agent. We lost Allegretti, and just depth-wise, I mean, it's one of those things. I think every GM would say the same. When you go into training camp, you're always looking at your backup line, and you're looking to make sure that you have 8, 9, 10 that you feel really good about. And so, certainly, again, mentioning Wanye and his development last year, I mean, there's 5 guys, and Caliendo played a little 6, and we still have Lucas, who has every year come back better with that injury. So, but again, I mean, there's been many years where we carried 10 offensive linemen. I think the last couple of years it may have been 9, but always want to shoot for that number there. And I thought, just looking at our roster, not only were we wanting to provide competition at that left tackle position, swing tackle position, but we also needed some more depth in the interior offensive line and players that had experience both at center and guard. So again, you can't have enough of those, and every team carries around 10. Again, I think for the most part of my GM tenure, I believe we were close to 10, and some years I think we even had 11 when we had guys that weren't counting against the 53. I think we snuck in an 11 one year, but we're always trying to look for 10 linemen. Some years it's 9, but just wanted to make sure that we had enough competition there to compete for those 8, 9, 10, 11 spots.
And I know Adam kind of asked you about, specific needs that you might still have left, but going into the draft, you had mentioned wide receiver and tackle obviously being two of the big ones. Are those positions where you'd still look to be bringing back some of the guys that you have that are outstanding free agents, like a Donovan Smith and McCole Hardman?
I think, we'll use this OTA period to kind of assess that. I think we feel good right now. I mean, look, a lot of these guys were playing college football last year. So I think how they do here in the meetings and how they do with just kind of absorbing the information and can they translate out there in the field is a big deal. Now, listen, we don't have pads on, so some of it, may tail into St. Joe's into training camp. But I think for right now, I think we're going to let these young guys go out there and see what they can do and how much they can absorb. And if we feel good about it, I mean, this will be kind of where we go from St. Joe's, and then we'll be able to adapt and adjust if needed. But I don't think anything would be imminent.
Brett's got a couple minutes left, so let's go Nick first. Go ahead, Nick.
Hey, Brett. Of the 7 guys that you drafted, is there a unique trait about each one of them that made you select them over maybe other guys on your board?
Well, many of them are captains of their team, but I would just say the intelligence. I think I'm always looking for athletic players. Versatility and intelligence, right after athleticism is always a priority for us. And I think all these guys, really from Xavier down to CJ, I mean, these are guys that are really smart and can adapt and adjust, we feel, to the pro game very quickly. So, again, height, weight, speed, and athletic ability will be number 1, but a close second will be versatility and intelligence. And we feel like all these guys kind of fit that bill.
Brett, I know you guys are familiar with Isaiah Pacheco and Clyde and what they bring to the table, but beyond them with Prince and P. Ryan and now Bailey and Steele in that mix, just evaluating that position, how do you feel after adding those undrafted free agents as far as the depth there?
Yeah, and Keontae Ingram is a guy we like too. We got him late last year, and it's hard when guys come in the middle of the season. We added him to our practice squad late, but I think we were a fan of his when he was at USC. So I think that's going to be one of those positions that will be just like the left tackle starting position, just like the tail end positions at corner. I think that running back position will be a battle, and it usually comes down to special teams and pass protector as a number 3 here. So I think all these guys have traits we like, and now it's just a matter of a couple of those guys just putting together a solid training camp, and that's from the mental side of things and from the special team side of things. So I do think, though, we have some guys that all have ability, and now it's just a matter of those guys going out there and earning position. But from a talent perspective, I think as you mentioned, Pete, with Bailey and Steele we brought in, and then last year, Prince and Keontae Ingram, I think all those guys have talent and ability to play in this league. Now it's just a matter of who can put together a solid training camp and earn the position.
So that's Brett Veach, Chiefs General Manager, speaking about the new Kelsey contract and the draft. We've got half an hour left coming up after the news. Hey now, it's the final half hour of 580 Sports Talk on this Monday afternoon. Brendan Dworzinski, Dan Lucero, and Spencer Dupuis here with you. We're done a little bit early because we've got Royals baseball tonight. 5:30 pregame start time, 6:07 first pitch from the Great White North, Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Game 1 of the series between the Royals and the Blue Jays today. We'll have pregame, postgame, and the game itself for you right here on 580 WIBW. Before we get there, though, we've got to get to our 580 Sports Talk headlines. We don't have a whole lot of time, so let's just dive right on into them. And my first headline today, guys, is going to be your starting lineup for the Kansas City Royals in support of Jonathan Bolin, who will be making his season debut today. It will be just his third game in the majors, as Dan told us earlier, made 2 appearances last year, 1 game as an opener, 1 game as a finisher, pitched 3 innings, gave up 1 run a season ago. He gets the start today in place of Alec Marsh, who is currently on the injured list. So your Royal starting lineup, it has actually been altered. Salvador Perez was scratched today because of back tightness. I saw someone in the Twitter replies who said, "This is my fault," and shared a screenshot of a tweet that said, "Salvi is going to injure his back carrying this crap offense." Unfortunately, that Twitter user, Ben, you have broken the next Royals Hall of Famer. So way to go. But your new starting lineup instead features one of my favorite things all year long. Cleanup hitter Nelly Velasquez. Let's go. Michael Garcia leads off at third. Bobby Witt Jr., your shortstop. Vinny P at first base. In the cleanup spot, your designated hitter, Nelson Velasquez. Michael Massey hits fifth. Freddie Fermin is the 6-hole hitter at catcher. MJ Melendez hitting 7th in left tonight. Hunter Renfroe hitting 8th in right. And Kyle Isbell hitting 9th in center field. How often are all 3 of your outfielders the bottom third of your order? That cannot be common.
Doesn't happen a lot, I wouldn't think.
Yeah.
Which is a little worrisome. Not worrisome, but that's not generally what you want, considering that's the group that usually is going to drive in a lot of runs and hit for a lot of power. MJ has been solid. He's tapered off a little bit over the last several games, but he's still hitting the ball pretty well, all things considered. But he's in the 7-hole tonight. That is your, again, Royals starting lineup. And it will be Jonathan Bolin on the mound today at Rogers Center for the Royals. Again, 5:30 pregame, 6:07 first pitch for Royals Blue Jays here on 580 WIBW.
Yariel Rodriguez on the mound for the Blue Jays, rookie right-hander out of Cuba, 0-1, 3.86 ERA and 3 starts. First headline for me. Bullying works. Major League Baseball will be addressing the uniform crisis, according to a story from Jeff Passan released late last night. After changes this spring to standard jerseys and pants led to widespread complaints from players and fans, a memo obtained Sunday night confirms that the league will address the uniform fiasco, including a return to larger lettering on the back of jerseys, remedying mismatched gray tops and bottoms, and addressing the new Nike jerseys' propensity to collect sweat. The changes will happen at the latest by the beginning of next season. They will also include fixes to the pants, widely panned this spring for being see-through. Now, we know that these new uniforms were a collaboration between Nike and Fanatics. Well, this memo threw Nike under the bus. Quote, "This has been entirely a Nike issue," the memo to players read. At its core, what has happened here is that Nike was innovating something that didn't need to be innovated. I am so ready for them to just changing the font on the back of the jerseys would feed families. If they could do that tomorrow.
Correct.
That would make the uniforms look so much more big league instead of looking like something you get if you're one of the first 15,000 fans through the gate on a random Tuesday night and it's Jersey Day sponsored by Bally Sports or whatever. But yes, they are going to be fixing all of the jerseys. Texter from the 913 on the Top City Metal Supply text line asks if they admitted to buying the jerseys from Kohl's. Kohl's would have made better jerseys than this.
Yeah, like everything. These jeans came from Kohl's, and buddy, that might be the best pair I own.
The Grand Slam brand would have put out better uniforms than these Nike Vapor Premium uniforms.
What bothers me about this memo to the teams, it's not that they are apparently going to fix this, and it's not even necessarily holding Nike's feet to the fire. They admitted there's a problem with the pants. Do you remember what they said as the season was starting about the pants? Oh, there's nothing wrong with them. There's just different lighting. Nah, dude, I couldn't see Shohei's manhood last season. MLB, I couldn't see his ding-a-ling all year. I could see it in every single promo shot this season.
Every time a white jersey was tucked in, it looked like a player was wearing a diaper.
It's just ridiculous.
So bad.
Trying to gaslight us now. Oh, yeah, Nike screwed up. It is actually bad. What? We lied before? No, we didn't. Come on.
Also, the Players Association is in business with Fanatics, so they have a business interest in not making Fanatics look too bad here. So Nike is having to eat the pile of crap that is being spoon-fed by the Players Association. But soon enough, you will see actually major league-looking uniforms. Hopefully sooner rather than later. I'm not ready to wait until 2025 to see uniforms that look pro.
I saw someone earlier today who said that they missed Majestic uniforms.
Yes.
Oh my
and
God,
wish
what a
baseball would
throwback.
go back to Majestic.
Correct.
Here's the problem with that. Do you know who owns Majestic?
Fanatics.
Yeah.
Fanatics owns everything. Fanatics is a scourge. Michael Rubin will not see heaven.
Yeah, it's bad, man. I mean,
They own the trading card company.
Yeah, they own Topps.
Yeah.
Which has every individual league like license now.
Mhm.
They are the what's the word? Why can't I think of the word?
Monopolized.
Yeah, well, they are a monopoly, yes, but the exclusive license to everything. Like how Madden is the exclusive video game of the NFL and has been getting worse year over year. Same thing with Fanatics. They have every exclusive licensing deal. Exclusivity, I guess is the word I'm looking for.
Because
it is awful.
They beat out Bowman, right, for the rookie card deal or something.
Yeah,
Or
I
do
mean,
own Bowman.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's brutal. It is just awful.
They are truly one of the worst companies in the history of modern capitalism. I wish them ill.
We've said this before when this issue was such a big deal coming out of spring training. There was no reason for it to be this bad other than thinking, well, we can use worse material and they can't do anything about it and we can make more money.
Yeah, we're saving money and it goes to us.
It's just terrible.
American capitalism. It's the same reason planes are falling apart. It's the same logic. It's the same reason you can't get on an airplane and not worry a wing is going to fall off. Anyway, Spencer, what's your first headline?
What was first thought as an extension for Travis Kelce, 2 more seasons. You and I were discussing this in the bullpen earlier, that it would have tied him through the 2027 season that ends in 2028. That is not the case. It was just a rework of his contract, changing out some numbers. According to Adam Schefter, he signed a 2-year, $34.25 million deal that includes $17 million fully guaranteed this year and most of next year guaranteed on day 3 of the league year in mid-March. So it's just basically an adjustment to how they're paying him the wages and giving him a raise as well, which is interesting. When Matt Verderame talked about how it was very confusing how it had come out about an extension, but it wasn't an extension.
Yeah, I'm kind of intrigued by this. I'm wondering if there are, and Brett Veach, you heard it right at the beginning of his press conference that we heard at the end of last hour. He did not say, I'm happy for Travis and his extension. And he mentioned, what word did he use? Reworked or redone deal or whatever. Was very clear about that. I don't know what that is supposed to mean long term. I'm really not. It does change what we talked about earlier with Jared Wiley's contract and how it would overlap with Travis Kelce for the next 4 years and all of that. I don't know that this necessarily means anything. If I was the Chiefs and Travis was open to it, I would try to work out essentially a 1-year rolling contract when this expires and just say, as long as you want to play, you will have a spot on this roster. And when you're ready to hang it up, then you can retire and we'll all be square. I imagine something like that is what is going to end up happening. He deserves this payday. He is the best tight end in the NFL. He is one of the greatest of all time. It has also led to my Twitter account having two different beefs going on at the same time, which is fans of other teams saying, because the Chiefs tweeted, we signed the greatest tight end of all time to a new reworked contract. And half of my Twitter going, Travis Kelce, I would literally kill myself if you asked me to. And the other half saying, oh, Gronkowski came out of retirement again. And then I also saw, I think it was Aaron Schatz of FTN Fantasy, the DVOA guy, who said that Chiefs fans just ignore Tony Gonzalez and pretend he didn't exist anymore, which is so wrong in so many ways. Travis Kelce is better than Tony G, though. He also plays in a more pass-happy league.
Yes,
Put up
totally
bigger
different
numbers.
times.
But I think Travis Kelce is better than Tony Gonzalez. They're also very different players.
Yeah.
That's why you really can't compare era to era, but so be it. But yeah, Kelce deserves it. There is no doubt about that. Let's get to some news from college basketball, shall we? We talked a little bit about the transfer portal and K-State earlier on today. Well, some other news today. One major player in the transfer portal, he is headed to UConn. That is Aiden Mahaney, who was from Moraga, California, which is where St. Mary's is. He spent the first 2 years of his career at St. Mary's, and now he is going to transfer, and he is headed to UConn. Here is the one major problem with UConn's haul this offseason. And UConn has been great so far in terms of the offensive talent that they have brought in. And I want to come and pull up their full list of guys that they have added. Why would I search UConn and it gave me Georgetown instead? That's extremely annoying. But they add Mahaney, who's a really good player, really, really talented player. They've also added Terrace Reed from Michigan.
The big man that K-State was in on, yeah.
I thought they'd added someone else.
Liam McNeely.
Liam McNeely, that's right. Recruit, not transfer. Here is the problem. And I think Danny Hurley's a really good coach, and he'll get this figured out. Other than Terrace Reed, exactly which players for UConn have any desire to play defense? Because by all accounts, and KU knew this when they were recruiting Liam McNeely, he's Bill Murray in Space Jam. No. I don't play defense. Aiden Mahaney, not a huge fan of playing defense. Some of the guys who are coming back for UConn, not exactly their strongest defenders. That is the only concern. If Hurley can get that out of them, and for the record, I think he will at some point this coming year, they will be in the mix to win a title again.
Because that's what you're banking on, right? Is that you don't play for Danny Hurley unless you defend. It's kind of like with Bill Self, right? Like you don't play, you don't get on the floor unless you make a commitment on that end to being at least the best defender you can be. Like there might be a limit to how good Aiden Mahaney can be on defense, but if he's going there, he's got to be all the way bought in on that end. Otherwise, he's not going to enjoy moving across the country from sunny California to Stores.
Yeah, no kidding.
You don't make that move if you think you're going to spend most of it riding pine because you won't defend.
I have a feeling, because you always hear stories about, well, I thought I was going to, this was going to happen when I got there. It didn't. I have a feeling when you have that in-home or on-campus visit with Danny Hurley, you know exactly what you're getting. I don't think he's the kind of guy who is going to sugarcoat things. That's just my guess, is that he's not going to mess around with you. He's going to tell you what you can expect, what you should expect. And it's a good get. Mahaney's a really good player. The other college basketball news I wanted to get to, Grant Nelson at Alabama. He is going to use his final year of eligibility, go back to Alabama. I think that makes sense. He was not going to get drafted this year in all likelihood, maybe late second round pick. He was awesome in the NCAA tournament for Alabama. Awesome down the stretch. So that's a big win for Nate Oates' group, who also this weekend got LeBaron Philon to sign up, the former KU signee, who was also once committed to Auburn.
There you have it.
Fun little narrative.
You know what time it is here on the 580 Sports Talk Headline. It is time for our favorite segment within a segment. It is time for the Playoff Roundup.
It's time for the 580 Sports Talk Playoff Roundup.
We have to fly through this one today because we are short getting out at the bottom of the hour, of course. We'll start in the NBA. First team into the conference semifinals, the Minnesota Timberwolves, who've won a playoff series for the first time since 2004. They sweep the horrible vibes Phoenix Suns with a win in Phoenix last night. Also yesterday, the Indiana Pacers and the New York Knicks took 3-1 series leads over Milwaukee and Philadelphia out east, while the Clippers survived blowing a 31-point lead to win their game over Dallas and tie the Mavericks at 2-2. Tonight, 3 games on deck. Boston tries to take a 3-1 lead over Miami. Oklahoma City and Denver have a chance for closeout victories. OKC at New Orleans for Game 4. Denver at home for Game 5 tonight against the Lakers. In the NHL, one clap for Spencer Dupuis' Washington Capitals. They are the first team out of the postseason after the New York Rangers completed the sweep with a victory yesterday. Also yesterday in the Western Conference, the Vancouver Canucks, Edmonton Oilers, and Colorado Avalanche took 3-1 leads in their respective Western Conference series. Tonight, the Panthers can close out the Lightning at home. That's Game 5 of that Eastern Conference series at Florida. I guess all the games are in Florida, but at the Florida Panthers. The Panthers are the home team. Vegas tries to take a 3-1 series lead after they lost Game 3 at home to the Dallas Stars.
Any worries about your Nuggets tonight?
Jamal Murray's hurt. That's not great. Dealing with a calf strain. He is questionable. There's been no update on his status. If he doesn't play, ruh-roh. Denver's very dependent on their starters. But if Murray plays a little bit, I think Denver probably wins. I mean, they were really bad in Game 4. They were really disinterested, and the Lakers beat them. And I don't think they will be in the mood to play with their food any longer. They want to wrap it up and be done with it. And I think they
get
should.
The extra rest.
Yes, they need the extra rest, especially if, again, Jamal Murray is hurt. Great Avs vibes. I will say that. Alexander Georgiev, I apologize.
All you need is the hot goalie. All you need to do is get hot for a couple months.
Hey, he's not doing anything spectacular. He's just stopping the pucks he's supposed to stop. And the Avs are 1 win away from going back to the conference semis.
That is our playoff roundup for today, and that is going to do it for today's 580 Sports Talk headlines. We're out early again for Royals baseball versus the Blue Jays tonight, so we'll take one final timeout. We'll come on back, wrap up this edition of 580 Sports Talk. Time to wrap up 580 Sports Talk. We will be back tomorrow, another edition of the show from 2 until 5:30. We'll have more Chiefs draft to get to. We'll talk about the KU guys and the K-State guys who are moving on to the NFL as well, where they are headed. Michael Swain will join us for Jayhawk Weekly. We'll get to all that and much more tomorrow from 2 until 5:30 on 580 Sports Talk. But first, let's get to a final word. And Dan, you are up first today.
Dylan Edwards, welcome home. What a great addition for Kansas State football. What a fun backfield that can be with 3 Kansas kids scooting down the field, running the rock, making highlight reel plays. K-State offense going to be must-see TV with Avery and with Giddens, and now with Dylan Edwards. It's going to be a lot of fun watching them play offense next year.
Spencer?
I'm going to use a quote from The Office. I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days before they've actually left. And I believe it's the quote for the Washington Capitals. I think that dynasty is over. Not dynasty, that era is over, I guess I should say, because they weren't able to win more than one cup. But shout out TJ Oshie playing game 4, the broken hand, leaving it all out there on the ice. He's probably done.
And he made it to the playoffs.
Yes, made it to the playoffs. Gotta appreciate what they did to be able to get to the playoffs. Now we're on to the Commanders. Bright future ahead.
Final word for me today. Not the sexiest draft class of Brett Veach's tenure. That was almost certainly 2 years ago. Frankly, even last year, you take a K-State guy with the final pick of the first round in Kansas City. Big splash there. Not the sexiest draft of all time, but I think a good process for the Chiefs. They had multiple needs going in, not major dire needs, but multiple needs. They went and they filled those. Depth on the offensive line, maybe a future starter with Hunter Norzad as well. You needed a starting caliber receiver. They got one with crazy speed. Got possibly their future starting left tackle. Help for the secondary with some steals at the end of the draft as well. I like the process for Brett Veach. Good moves there for the Chiefs. We're out of here for 580 Sports Talk today. We're back tomorrow from 2 to 5:30. For Dan, for Spencer, I'm Brendan. This is 580 Sports Talk.